Hey, welcome to Normal Eric's show. Host Rob Nora, looking as disheveled as always. God, do I need a beard trim? It's all right. It's all right. Don't think twice. It's all right. Your boy Rob Nora, back again, second time today, doing a call-in show where I let you, motley crew, control the direction of the show. Hopefully we get some people that disagree with me, but if not, that's okay too. We'll talk about whatever's on your mind. I recommend the VP debate last night or topics directed towards the coming election, but as long as it's something that I find remotely relevant, I'll be happy to talk to you about it. So we'll take calls through Discord if someone's really chomping at the bit and can't figure out Discord, because let's be honest, I am an old man, 40 years old, and my contemporaries and myself sometimes have difficulty figuring out technology. Perhaps we could do a Google voice call that they could call in on phone. But been a very good mood. I don't go into work till Sunday. I got friends coming over this Friday, Saturday. Poor timing. So I live in this little town, outside of this town called Clarion. And Clarion has this big fall festival called the Autumn Leaf Festival. And they have different days or different events. Friday, I believe, is Craft Day. And so my wife and a bunch of her friends are going out to Craft Day and to get stuff for her sewing machine and other sorts of crafts that they'll be interested in. And then my friends will be coming over and we will not be going to Craft Day. So basically the husbands and boyfriends of that crew will be hanging around at the house. Now, why is this relevant to you all? Well, I won't be streaming Friday, but they'll be staying around Friday into Saturday. If that was not occurring, I would go to the Trump rally this weekend in Butler, Pennsylvania, which is the exact location that the first assassination attempt occurred at, which is about an hour away from me. And so I would have went to that if I didn't have these things pre-planned. So you've been trying to bait Pisco to call in. Pisco's welcome, as he knows, to call in anytime. I did see right before I came on, was it you that said, like, you're too much of a coward to call in Pisco? I don't know about all that. But Pisco's like, nah, it's Rob that's afraid of me. Look, you can say whatever you want about me. Anyone who thinks I'm afraid to debate anyone is completely out of their mind. How many times have I talked to him on his turf, with his moderators, with his partners, for hours and hours, letting them control the topic of conversation? So he can cope. That's okay. I understand the need. Besides, it's a good day for Pisco. He got the lawfare that he wanted today, right? We got the October surprise of Jack Smith releasing. He can't try Trump, so now they'll just release the information to the public to try to interfere in the election. Didn't look through it. Doesn't seem like... I can tell already from the reporting, there's nothing in that we haven't heard before. It's just another excuse to talk about January 6th again. Now, I want you to go back. Last night, we'll talk about the VP debate again, and like I said, we'll be taking calls. So, National Apple Festival. That sounds good, man. Would love it. I'm sure Courtney and Hank would really like it. So first things first. Oh, we already got someone in the waiting room. Let's get the Discord room invite out there. Now, there'll be that one guy, Scratch. He calls in all the time. He wants to talk about immigration. Cool. We can talk about immigration. No problem. We'll talk about immigration. Jack Smith wanted it released. He filed it, and Judge Chutkan ordered it released. Yeah. But anyways, there's the link to the Discord. We can talk about whatever people want within reason. CBS told you Walz destroyed. That's false. So we'll talk about the VP debate a little as we wait for the lobby to fill in. I'll go through the rules of the call-ins, but we'll basically take it in any direction that people want. That's good for me, and I think people like calling. You don't have to call in and disagree with me on this show. A lot of times I try to limit people calling in to people that want to argue with me about something, but it doesn't have to be the case here. So if you want to call in and agree with me, that's fine. But there's the link. You can see in the chat there, the Discord link. If you have trouble figuring out how to get that Discord to work, just speak up in the chat and someone, myself or someone, could work you through how that works. So I had said when it comes to the VP, I thought I did a fantastic job. I was even wearing the same shirt, which is how you know I'm grimy. So I was at work, and I have like 3 shirts while I'm at work. And I washed, before I went to bed last night, I washed this one and put a different shirt on. And then today was uber heavy cleaning day at work, and my shirt got quite the mess, so I had to put this one back on. Anywho, same outfit I was in last night, where I was talking about this, and I said that what Vance needs to do in the VP debate is stick to labeling Kamala Harris as the record of the failed Joe Biden policies. And he did a phenomenal job in saying it should be about the record of Donald Trump for his 4 years versus the record of the Harris-Biden administration for their 4 years. And he did a fantastic job with that. If you go back and you watch the debate I did on the Hippy Dippy a couple of weeks ago, I told people I was frustrated with Trump's performance, and so I wanted to show how to not take the bait and do a debate where I focused on the issues that Americans think are most important and why Trump is clearly superior. And I thought I did a phenomenal job in that debate. And I said in my opening statement, what they'll want to do is keep saying, but January 6th, but January 6th, but January 6th, which is exactly what people like Pisco did in that debate. And of course, unfortunately, some of the people on my side took the bait. That's what today's about. This is what Judge Chutkan's order about. Changing the narrative once more. Back to January 6th. That's all they have. All they have is lawfare. That's it. Just like all they had was Russia, 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 Russia for 4 years from 2016 to 2020. Oh, I don't care. Pisco could cope to his audience all he wants. It's fine. He knows it's performative. He knows. I'm just letting you know. He knows. Look, I'll say this. I don't begrudge people that are sort of playing characters on here streaming. Now, I guess we'll talk a little meta about streaming real quick. I mentioned this the other day. Actually, I mentioned it in my car stream today somewhat. There are several things that you're doing as a streamer, but primarily what you need to be is entertaining. It's just true. People won't watch you if they're not having fun. Now, people like to learn things, but mostly people tune in because they're enjoying. This is entertainment for most people. Very few people are choosing to watch me or any other streamer, whether it be a video game streamer, a politics streamer, an artist streamer, whatever. Very few people are watching because it's like, oh, this is the best avenue I have for learning something. There are those sort of channels that could be the case. Maybe you're really into a history channel or something like that. But most of it has to be entertaining, or there's other options. And so one of the things that happens is it tends to cause people to exaggerate their own personality. And I'm guilty of that to a degree. I certainly am. But I also try to stay humble and understand that authenticity is the most important thing that I have to offer. So I'm not on here making claims that I don't really believe, unless I'm telling you that. Like if I'm putting my hat backwards and being a lefty, or if I'm being, transpositive Rob, then you kind of get the idea, right? But in general, everything I'm talking about, I really believe. Sometimes, though, you get a little more heated than you otherwise would in real life, and that's okay. I think other people do that more so than me, but I don't really mind it. Like, you have to ask yourself sometimes, are people saying what they're saying just for clicks, or do they really believe it? Or are they intentionally, when you start saying the most, like, hyperbolic things like, oh, Trump supporters that got murdered at a rally, they're effing around and finding out. Is that good for your brand? Are you spiraling? What is it? So I don't, I don't know what Toke's talking about. Rob, I love you, but you kind of seem weak by saying, I'll wait until you guys are done. In that debate, sure, we'll talk about that for a second. Remind me of that. Let me highlight that comment. I'll get back to it. So I understand the performative nature of someone like Destiny being like, oh, I'll talk to Rob. He's like the worst bad faith guy ever. He knows that's not true. He knows it's not true. He might think that I'm beyond hope as a weird Trump supporter that's super biased. But he knows when he makes claims like, oh, he's always bad faith. He knows it's garbage. When Pisco's making claims, I've crushed Rob in every single debate. He knows it's garbage. He knows it. He knows he didn't do that well in that last panel we were on. He knows. He knows that I did much better than them in that panel. He knows it. That's why every chance they got, they were like, Gibbs, Gibbs, Gibbs. They didn't want to talk to me. We're asking Gibbs questions. They know. Now, he might think, I actually did better than Rob in that debate. But the idea that's like, I crushed him and he's full of it. He knows. But even if he does truly believe it, and you people are right, and he really does believe it, he's just wrong. And that's okay. He's welcome to say those sorts of things. I think Pisco, unfortunately, it's not to my taste, but to each their own. Pisco, unfortunately, plays to his character way too much. Like, his posts on X are just like, every day it's just to say, Trump, resign in shame! Resign and go to prison, Trump! You need to resign in shame! And like, I've told Pisco this, I don't dislike Pisco. I don't mind if he wants to curse and swear at me and stuff like that. No problem. No, doesn't bother me in the least bit. But when you're trying to interact with people and like goad them into talking to you, like someone who's a bigger personality, has more viewers or something than you can't just be an a-hole right out of the gate. And Pisco does that sort of stuff all the time. And I get it. It's red meat for that bubble and that audience, the sort of Destiny audience that he's appealing to. And that's fine. Look, Pisco has the advantage of being a lefty on these spaces. I think he's grown faster than me. He probably has more eyeballs on him. Good for him. So I'm not giving advice on how to grow your channel. They seem to be doing just fine without me. I'm just saying that oftentimes it comes across as laughable. And of course you could remember things like the Bowman situation where he'll just blatantly lie if it means not losing even a little small meta argument. So, I mean, I don't know. So, I mean, whatever. The character part of it, I don't mind. But anyways, let's get to calls. Here's the deal. Put one more time. We'll put the calls out there, or the link to the Discord channel. Talk about any topic you want as long as I find it interesting. If if it's boring, I'll probably be like, hey, thanks for calling in. Or if it's not moving in a way that I think would be entertaining to the audience, even if I'm liking it, I might move it away. The only thing I ask is it be within terms of service. So please understand, even if you don't like the rules, we're not going to do anything that's going to get anyone kicked off YouTube, Twitch, or any other platform. So there's certain things. I don't want racial slurs. I don't want calls to violence. Things like that. If you do that stuff, I'm just going to boot you and tell you not to come back. The only other thing is that I'm not trying to be rude to people. I was explaining this earlier. Sometimes I feel like I'm coming across as rude when I'm like, okay, I got to let you go. But you have to understand, oftentimes there's a considerable amount of people waiting to get on the call. And so I can't really talk to everyone as long as I would like. It'd be nice to have full hour-long conversations, particularly with conversations that I find interesting. But a lot of times it's difficult to do that if there's 5-6 people calling. Now, if no one gets in the queue and it's just one person, maybe we'll talk for an hour. But I would also like to be done streaming at a reasonable hour tonight. So having said all that, let's roll. Whatever topics people want to talk about is fine by me. Let's do it. Let's start the show. All right. I think I got this. Oh. What? How did we agree that we were going to do this? I'm trying to bring people in the order that they enter, and I forget. If there's any mod that doesn't mind hopping in my Discord and just letting me know when I'm done with the caller who came in the next order, that would be great. If not, we'll just plow through it. We'll see. But let's start. All right, Xhris or Xhris, are you there? Hello, how you doing? Oh, can't complain. Got off work, so my back's killing me, but I mean, that's all right. When you're as handsome as me, you have to have some deficit, so might as well be a pain to back. That's right, that's right. So what's on your mind this fine evening? Let me unmute you for the audience. He was just saying, sorry he was muted there. He was just saying I'm the best streamer he's ever heard, and you know.
You are the only streamer that I watch with any regularity. I'll watch Destiny every so often, but I try to catch you pretty often.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I know you disagree with me a lot, though, but that's okay.
I do quite a bit, but that's kind of why I watch you. So
more
I wanted to. There is a talking point that's been going around that I just want to nip right in the bud because it's bugging me, and it might be a little pedantic, but I want to catch it. It was a big Tim Pool headline, and
can I guess what it is, if you don't mind?
Tell me.
Is it going to be about the Minnesota abortion law?
No.
Okay.
No,
I'm sorry. Then I'm way off base. Go ahead then. Thanks for the sub, Iceman. I appreciate it.
I do have thoughts about that, but it's
no, wherever you want to go, man. Obviously, we have limited time, but sure, whatever you want to talk about, it's fine by me.
So the thing that really bugged me was when they're talking about immigration and the moderators say, just so our viewers are aware, most of the migrants in Springfield, Ohio have legal status. And JD Vance said, the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check. Those weren't the rules. That just wasn't the rules.
Sure it was. That's what they said up front. They said they said we are not going to fact check. It is up to the debaters to fact check each other.
So that's they close, but that's not what they said. They said so they said so they gave some of the rules, but they said the primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact check claims made by each other. CBS News reserves the right to mute the candidates' microphones to maintain decorum. So they never said they weren't going to fact check, just that they would give the candidates the opportunity to fact check each other.
Okay, so your big nitpick here is technically they didn't say it was against the rules to fact check. They just implied that the spirit was that the debaters should fact check each other and they would facilitate opportunities for that.
Yeah, and it's just it's one of these things where it's like, I know it's going to be a talking point, so I just want to be clear, like they didn't, because the claim is that they violated their own rules, right?
What does it matter if they violated the rules or the spirit of what they set out and what they said that the way the debate would be? It hardly matters. Like, for example, let's say, for the sake of argument, let's say they came out and said, the rules are we will not fact check. They blatantly said that. And then they did things the exact same. Does it really change anything? Is it now you're like, oh, shucks, they did violate their own rules? No, you would still be like, who cares? Right? Like, there's no punishment for them violating their own rules. Similarly, if the rule was each person gets 2 minutes to speak and they allowed someone to speak for 2 minutes and 40 seconds at one point, you wouldn't be like, that's it, debate over, the rules have been violated. And by the way, it's an interesting discussion, this, from my perspective, because as someone who debated policy debate in college, there are clearly defined rules. But one of the humorous things about any style of debate, by the very nature of the activity, the rules are sort of up for debate during the debate. So it makes for an interesting, so in policy debate, the way that works out, like one of the rules is if you're affirmative, you have to have a plan that defends the resolution. But half the teams don't care. They're just like, no, that's racist. We won't do that. And they still win. So like, I'm very unpersuaded by like sort of, well, the rules technically of this style of debate were X. And if that rule is violated, like, okay, what's the enforcement? What's the punishment? To me, the more important thing is, regardless if it was directly outlined as a rule or not, it once more was an example of bias moderation in many ways, but that was the most egregious way, where they said that the spirit was, it wasn't their job to fact check, it was the job of the debaters, and they decided to weigh in to try to save a floundering Tim Walz, and they did so in a very poor way.
Do you think... Yeah, that's fair. I think I don't want it to become a talking point because it's inaccurate, right? They didn't violate the rules. So if you want to get into, well, the spirit of what they meant was that they weren't going to fact check, okay, you could have that discussion. But
I mean, it's pedantic to the point where it doesn't really matter. But sure, okay, fair enough. If they didn't say, like, and I don't even know, like, what they say out front isn't necessary. Like, what if there's a discrepancy from what they told the audience and then what they, like, the agreement they sent the debaters beforehand? So I don't know if this is how it worked, but presumably they had communication with the debaters that would be something like this. Look, the format's going to be 2 minutes, and then the other person gets 2 minutes, and then we give each 1 minute. Like, you would, would you agree with me? You would guess that something like that was communicated to the debaters beforehand, right? Sort of a general idea of what the format would be. What if the rules they say at the outset are slightly different than the formatting rules that they sent to, you know what I mean? So like, there's so many, when it comes to the technicality of did they violate the rules, that's irrelevant to me. I don't mind people saying it because it's difficult to communicate to someone like, well, the spirit of the rule was X, where you could just make it easier for people to understand and say, look, they said they weren't going to fact check. The rules were they were going to leave the debaters fact check, and they didn't abide by that. I don't think that that's a lie. That's basically what happened. You're right. They technically, I guess, didn't say the rule is we can't fact check, but it's oddly important.
Do you think because his response was the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check. Do you think he was lying or misinterpreting?
No, neither.
Or let me put it this way: interpreting as you interpreted it.
Yes, that's what he was doing, right? He was saying, I think that any reasonable person that heard. Did you watch the debate live?
I did. Yep.
When you heard them say that, was the impression you got? Oh, they're not going to fact check like ABC did.
No.
Well, then we completely had a different impression. I thought that.
I
thought that the specific reason. Why do you think they even said that? Don't you think it was because of pushback that the moderators at ABC got?
I think probably, yeah.
Right. So but
they never said They never said they weren't going to fact check.
But the entire idea was they saw the pushback that people had of the ABC. And by the way, something that's going on behind the scenes is this. I hope this is the case. First off, you've probably heard my feelings before. At the top level, I think the Republican Party is garbage. They don't want Donald Trump. They want Mitch McConnell's, But those that are waking up, that are sort of like the more MAGA populist wing, they're going to rightfully, when they win, and this is what they should have done long ago, I would completely shut out the mainstream media. Like, I would be like, CBS, ABC, CNN, New York Times, you will never get an interview for us. We will not do anything on your networks at all, ever. We will never do a debate with you all moderating. You have shown your ass over and over again. You've shown that you're just partisan cheerleaders for the other side. We're not going to deal with you. Done. End of story. And I think that probably they see that writing on the wall. I think that a place like CBS sees that. Now, unfortunately, with Trump, he can't help himself. He'd still do interviews with them because that's how he is. So if he wins, he'll still do it. If I was in the room with Trump and advising him, I'd be like, what are you doing? Stop it. But he'll still have Maggie Haberman follow him around and leaking conversations. Like, it's just weird how Trump does that. It's not, in my opinion, it's a bad move. But so I think that they tried to come out and be like, look, we're going to be more reasonable than ABC was. And that was the spirit of what they said.
There was an absolute implication, right, that their main focus wasn't going to be fact-checking, right? They say what their primary role is, but of course that leaves space
I think
for
that the most common inference from that would be they're going to leave each other fact-check each other instead of weighing in. And it was clear. I knew, and if you followed my Twitter thread or X thread, I knew that the moderation was about to go downhill after the second question. Do you remember what the second topic was?
Remind me.
It was climate change. Well, it was Hurricane Helene, which quickly became climate change, right?
Right.
Vance does something kind of smart. I would have answered the question slightly different, but Vance did it perfectly fine. And it's something that I try to tell my audience all the time when debating. And I screw this up a lot. But you want to have as narrowly tailored as an answer as possible. In other words, you want to be able to win the argument while conceding as many of your opponent's arguments as possible, right? Because the broader your argument is, particularly in a 2 minutes to speak format, the more area of attack that your opponent has. And oftentimes what happens is, perceptually, if one of the broad planks of your argument falls through or is attacked successfully, even if it doesn't discredit your whole argument, perceptually to an audience it does. So if you say the following 12 people said that vaccines will kill you, and 11 of them did, but the 12th didn't, and I say, aha, what about that person? He didn't say this, see? And then I just focus on that. Even though you're right about those other 11, it diminishes your argument because you opened it up to that sort of... So Vance cleverly is like, instead of arguing whether or not climate change exists or what causes it, just says, let's for the sake of argument concede it. And here's why our plan would still be better. And I knew, I'll finish with this. When I knew the fix was in was, for weirdly, like the way the first question went was moderator asks a question, then they say, ask the other side a question similar, and then they're like, give each side a response, and they're like, okay, next topic. And this, they ask a question, Then they ask the other side a question, and then they have response, and then they say, before they went to the next topic, they said something like, and there is a consensus among scientists that the climate is rapidly warming and that emissions are one of the major reasons why. Now, that to me, that was a signal that they had pre-planned that line, because what's the purpose of saying that? No one said otherwise. Vance didn't argue against the existence of climate change. He's like, okay, let's say emissions are doing this. This is what we should do, right? It was like they had that pre-planned. They pre-planned. They assumed that Vance was going to say climate change is blown out of proportion and we don't have evidence of how much emissions are causing it. And so that was a pre-planned line that they had designed to act as fact checkers, de facto fact checkers, or basically a participant in the debate to help one side. And I knew from that point on that the moderation was going to be terrible, which obviously then the very next question vindicates that when it came to the quote fact checking on immigration.
Do you think that they so if you're let me see if I am going to guess what you're claiming. I think you would claim then that if they're going to provide a fact check or a pseudo fact check, you would like both candidates to be able to respond to that.
My overwhelming preference would be for them to provide no fact checks whatsoever. In fact, for me, the way that these debates, my buddy Phil Kerpen actually, I think, correctly outlined, these debates should literally have no moderation. They should have a technical person that takes you to commercial and shuts off the microphone of the person not speaking. That's it. And what it should be is the debaters themselves get to choose the topics, speak for 5 minutes, and then the other person gets a chance to respond for 5 minutes. Then there's a 4-minute back and forth where both sides could talk. Then it goes to the other person to choose the topic they want. And it goes like that until you're out of time. That's the way it should be. Much like when I watch a professional sporting event, I don't want the refs to decide the game. I don't care the refs' opinions. I want to watch two athletes compete against each other. And I try to moderate like that as well when I'm moderating debates. People don't want to hear me as the moderator. My job is, if things get messy, to kind of untangle the web and keep the conversation moving forward. It's not my job to put my thumb on the scale. And so I don't think they should be fact-checking at all, because it's almost impossible as a moderator to not have some sort of bias. And if you start fact-checking, well, you're now putting yourself as this arbiter of truth, and sometimes you're incorrect. Like, we've seen examples of that with, in the past with moderators that were doing this. And so that's exactly what happens here. But you're correct, I guess, before we get to that, because I don't want to speak all night. Before we get to that, yes, if you're going to say, okay, now we're going to weigh in and we're going to fact-check, then you better be on your toes. And you better be making an effort to fact-check both sides. Let me give you an example of someone who sort of does this in a roundabout way. Andrew Wilson. Andrew Wilson, when he moderates a debate, I think he's a fantastic moderator. But one of the things he likes to do is he likes to ask questions after the debate of the debaters, right? And did you ever notice he goes out of his way to try to ask a difficult question of at least one on each side?
Yes.
And that's what, if you're going to interject yourself, you should make an effort. Even if you can't be completely without bias, you should be making an effort to say, listen, I'm at least going to try to be pointed to both sides. And so when you could see blatant falsehoods, both in the ABC Trump-Harris debate and this CBS debate of Harris and Walz, and they don't say a word, and then there's things with Trump or with Vance that they do weigh in, and sometimes when they're weighing in, it's not as clear-cut as they're saying. I think that becomes a huge problem.
Yeah, I think so. I guess when they say the overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. So you don't object to that because they weren't fact-checking, right? They were just stating something.
Well, I object to the idea that the thrust of what they're trying to say is they were assuming that the side that's... Because my belief is this. There is no scientific consensus on the issues that matter. There is a scientific consensus that warming's occurring, that climate change is occurring. There is a scientific consensus that emissions have something to do with it and that humans have to do with emissions. But that's where the consensus ends. There's not a consensus on How long do we have before the worst impacts occur? There's not a consensus on what do those worst impacts look like. There's not a consensus on how much do we need to reduce emissions to stave off the worst of this. All of this is heavily debated. And I think that what we see, much like what we saw with COVID and with other areas of expertise, particularly in the scientific field, many times what happens is what's seen as a consensus is largely because there is a group of people that control the field of that particular area, in this area, climate change. And there's a lot of money that comes with saying the right things. Much like when it came to gain of function research, you had 47 people immediately sign off on a paper for Peter Zazek wrote saying there's no way this could have been gain of function from the Wuhan lab. No way. And all these 47 people. Well, what you quickly found out was, well, if gain of function gets blamed, these 47 scientists stand to lose immensely because much of their funding is to do gain of function research. And the same is true of climate change. It's oftentimes, it's not that climate change isn't occurring, but oftentimes the effects of it are magnified for political reasons. And so when you start to weigh in and you start to say things like, well, there's a consensus, it's done so for political reasons is what you're doing. You're not leaving, and I don't think J.D. Vance was saying anything on that topic specifically that was controversial or too hyperbolic. He wasn't like saying this is all a hoax that would maybe warrant them saying something like that.
Yeah, he very deliberately avoided making that claim. Right.
And so if for them to weigh in at that, on that benign of a point, just goes to show that they're doing their best perceptually for an audience to sort of let them know this side's right and this side's wrong. And then that becomes even more evident on the next topic. And when they get called out, when they're talking about Springfield, Ohio, when they get called out, they shut his mic off as he's explaining what's going on. And it's just, I understand the side that's used to controlling the narrative, the side that cheers for the establishment, which is at this point the Democratic Party. It's not that there aren't establishment people in the Republican Party. There certainly are. But the Democratic Party is almost wholly on the side of the establishment at this point, and most of these institutions are completely on that side. The bulk of the mainstream media, almost the entirety of academia, almost the entirety of the entertainment industry, almost the entirety of social media, sans X at this point. They're so used to having the control of all of these institutions and the narratives that they just take it for granted. And so they're like, of course, why? I see this Sage Outcast guy on my X feed right now. He's saying, oh yeah, because MAGA should just be allowed to spread lies. And it's nonsensical because I could be like, there's certainly a lot of lies that were told by Xhris and Walz. Why no fact checking on them? And it's always the default assumption for people that have grown up with these institutions of power constantly being on their side is the complete expectation that these institutions will put the thumb on the scale for them at every time. And they're not upset that they think, well, it would be a shame if Tucker Carlson moderated a debate because he would put his thumb on the scale for the other side. That's what they'll say. But what they're really worried about is, well, we're just worried that it would be neutral. We don't want neutral observers. That's why say what you will about CNN, I have my reasons or I have my suspicions why I think they allowed the debate to go the way it was with Trump and Biden. But did you see how furious all of the Biden supporters were? How dare CNN not weigh in and crush Trump's lies? How dare they not do that? That was the narrative. And ABC took a cue from that and said, that's what we'll do. They are not neutral advocates. They are not neutral arbiters. They wear the veil of arbitration so that they are somehow above the debaters and arbiters of truth, but they are merely participants designed to help one side. And it's been that way for a very long time. It was that way in 2016. It was that way in 2020. It's that way in 2024, and it will continue that way in perpetuity. And a lot of people that are Democrat voters love it. They're like, great, good, grand. Just like they love the lawfare and the two-tiered system of the FBI. Just like they like the two-tier system of the moderation on social media prior to X.
Yeah. Let's not get distracted. So I think, I mean, it's tough. So I'm a lefty. As a lefty, I think there's this huge challenge that Trump presents, right? And you can say, like, he's a very dishonest person, or let's be more charitable, he's very imprecise with his language, right? So, for example, in the previous debate, he said, Walz claimed that 9-month abortions are absolutely fine, right? Which is not the case.
Trump said that?
That was Trump's claim, yeah.
Did he say Walz or did he say Northam? He said Walz. He might have said Walz. I remember him talking about Ralph Northam, the former governor of Virginia. But I'll take your word. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't remember that specific line.
No, maybe I misunderstood. In any case, that's not true, right? No one is saying 9-month abortions are absolutely fine. Maybe there is legislation in place that allows it, but that's different from right. So he's being imprecise.
No, wait. Okay, but even there, so you see the problem there. What does the word "fine" mean?
So my point is that Trump, because he is imprecise with his language, presents a very unique challenge to kind of the establishment journalist class.
Okay,
right?
But let me ask you, and there's no wrong answer here. I'm asking you, if you hear Trump say, Walz thinks 9-month abortions are fine, what is your interpretation of what you think he's saying there?
I think he's saying that that he's making the claim that this person says that 9-month abortions are fine.
But do you think he's saying 9-month abortion? Walz said 9-month abortions are great and they're awesome to have. Or Walz says 9-month abortions are something that should be legal. What do you think he means by the word fine?
Probably what I think Trump is trying to plant in your head that he is pro 9-month abortion. Right.
See, I disagree. For me, when I hear the word fine, what I think he's saying is he's saying they should be allowed. It's fine. Like if I say to my neighbor, if my neighbor says, "Hey, do you mind if I park my car in your yard?" and I say, "Yeah, it's fine." I'm not saying, "Wow, I really love you parking your car in my yard." I'm just saying, "No, that's cool. You could do it." I don't necessarily like it or dislike it. I'm just saying it's allowed. That's to me what the term fine means.
Do you think absolutely fine is stronger, or do you think that doesn't really change it?
Okay. No, I don't think it changes it. Now, I don't remember this exact quote. It could be that he worded it a little differently, and he was saying he celebrates 9-month abortion. He may have said it that way, but just illustrating the problem in what you just said, because it's factually true that Walz's legislation does allow 9-month abortions.
Okay, so but that wasn't the claim, right?
Well,
that wasn't Trump's claim.
If we interpret him saying Walz thinks 9-month abortions are fine is that they should be allowed, then yes, that is an accurate statement. Because the legislation that Walz put forth allows 9-month abortions.
This is my point, Rob, is that we have to go through an added layer of interpretation just to get at what we think Trump is talking about. His language is imprecise, right? I think
that's true of everyone.
Let's set this example aside. Would you agree that Trump's language is imprecise in general?
Sure, I would say that about pretty much every politician, but I will say that you could say that Trump's more prone to hyperbole.
Okay, so would you acknowledge that presents a unique challenge to journalists?
No. Why would it be unique if I just said that I think almost every politician does it? That's the opposite of unique.
Okay, you don't think that he's more prone to hyperbole or more prone to imprecise language?
He could be more prone to hyperbole, but I don't think that presents a unique challenge, because certainly other politicians are prone to hyperbole as well. So the idea that there's some sort of threshold that Trump crosses this threshold slightly that someone like Joe Biden didn't, so now all of a sudden it presents a unique challenge. For example, you don't think some of the outright lies that people like Tim Walz and Joe Biden have said about their lives aren't stories prone to hyperbole? And yet we famously see the Washington Post. Remember when they had this live lie checker that every time Trump told a lie, they would put it out on their website. Oh, there's another lie. We're up to 7,000, blah, blah, blah. And then when Biden got elected, they're like, we're not going to do that because he doesn't lie. Do you think that that's because Trump presented a unique challenge? Or do you think the more likely answer, seeing as how we can see blatant lies that Joe Biden has told, is that they were like, we're putting our thumb on the scale. We like Biden and we don't like Trump?
I think, and this is my honest answer, I'm not trying to be shady or anything. I think that Biden and Harris and Walz and Vance, they lie like politicians lie, right? They lie by exaggerating or by not quite being forthcoming about what the legislation they're proposing might entail. I think Trump when he lies, he says things like, the Haitians are eating cats and dogs, right?
Okay. So first off, on that claim specifically, there were reports from people at town hall meetings and otherwise, and on social media, of people saying that Haitians were eating cats and dogs, right? Saying that Trump needs to be more careful before he says something like that because he didn't have proof is one thing. But he didn't wholesale make this up. These were reports that people had been reporting to town council meetings that had been making posts on social media. And that, to me, is a far less dangerous or egregious lie than something like hands up, don't shoot. which was spread verbatim by almost every Democrat politician, which not only was a lie that was never proven, but was definitively proven to be a lie by Eric Holder's Department of Justice that did an investigation into this as a sort of hate crime. And so that was, and yet the media and Democrats still repeated that lie. Or Trump said Nazis were good people. Or we've seen in every debate so far, Trump's Project 2025. It's a lie. Those are blatant lies. So this isn't, and that's a more blatant lie. That's a more blatant lie. Let me real quick. That's a more blatant lie than saying they're eating the cats and dogs. Because there's at least reporting. There are people that said, yeah, they're eating cats and dogs. Now, I agree with you. That shouldn't be the threshold of which you repeat something, just hearing someone say it. But that's different than it's definitively been proven to be wrong, which is what Project 2025 being connected to Trump has been, or Trump saying Nazis were fine people. Those have definitively been proven to be wrong, and yet those lies are repeated, and they're not fact-checked by the media.
So, yeah, I think we'll probably disagree here, because like "hands up, don't shoot" is a political slogan, right? It didn't apply to the exact scenario, but the spirit, like you're saying, right, the spirit of it is there.
But wait a minute, couldn't you say the same thing about eating cats and dogs? The spirit of it is that these people from a country that has vastly different cultural values to us have been imported en masse into small communities, and it's causing incredible amounts of pain there. And you could say, yeah, but the specific detail of eating cats and dogs are wrong. And so therefore you say, you take umbrage with that. You say it's a unique lie. The exact same narrative or the exact same type of situation occurs with Hands Up, Don't Shoot. They accused this particular cop of murdering an innocent black man, which directly led to people rioting, and it was based on a lie. And you're like, well, yeah, but it's a political slogan, and it was sort of indicative of other things. Same situation with eating cats and dogs. No one rioted or attacked police with the eating cats and dogs stuff. We did see that with Hands Up, Don't Shoot, though.
So with Hands Up, Don't Shoot, that describes something that happens, right? There are instances where someone has their hands up. And
people do eat cats and dogs.
Not in Springfield, Ohio, as far as we know. Right?
And Michael Brown didn't have his hands up and get shot in his situation. Same exact scenario. You could say, well, this has happened in the past at places, right? People have eaten cats and dogs in places. Like, you can't see the double standard that you're employing right now?
I see where you're coming from. Yeah. I think the fact that it's being used to make a statement about immigrant culture... Mm-hmm. Right. There's no, I guess I'll have to look into the town halls because this is news to me. I've done research into these claims, and there seems to be one claim that someone heard a rumor about their neighbor's daughter's friend, and they posted it on Facebook. And let me be clear with you. I don't think that a candidate for president should be making declarative statements based on that flimsy of evidence. I agree with you there. I just don't think it's this particularly a uniquely egregious thing. I don't think that it's as damaging as many. You understand what I'm saying? Like, one, I think this directly compares to Hands Up, Don't Shoot, which was a more pervasive lie that was told by far more people and accepted as the truth. Second, the reason that was worse was that it was definitively debunked, unlike the eating cat. It still could come out that someone was eating cats and dogs in Springfield. Do you honestly believe that, Rob?
Do I honestly believe that it could come out that someone ate a cat or a dog in Springfield? Sure.
Do you think it's likely that that's a true statement, or do you think it's?
I would say probably not, but I would say there's a chance that could occur. Yeah. But there is no chance that Hands Up, Don't Shoot existed. That's been debunked. It did not. The Justice Department that looked into it under Barack Obama had every incentive to say that occurred if it did. And this was not only directed at a group of people that were being physically attacked, which also makes the situation work, in the police, but it was specifically directed at one particular officer who was not only receiving death threats, but fighting for his life legally. And yet he was smeared routinely almost through the entirety of the Democratic Party and the media that repeated, thank you so much, Defund Media. Thank you for the raid. I really appreciate it. We're taking callers tonight, so if you're interested, our friend Xhris is talking to me right now. By the way, is that how you say your name? It's X. It's like Chris with an X.
You could just say Chris.
Chris,
Chris
okay.
Is fine.
Okay, so I always, in my head, I always say Xhris, and I'm like, well, there's no C. But
I've gotten so many different pronunciations of it. So do you... So your interpretation is you don't see Trump as like a unique challenge for journalism.
No, I think that there was this journalist. Okay. I live around Pittsburgh. So there was this lady who worked for one of the local news stations here in Pittsburgh. And I remember she said something that sort of went a little viral in like 2018, 2019. And what she said was, Trump supporters take what Trump says as directional, right? And his opponents take what he says as hyper-specific. So, for example, Trump's making a directionally true statement about the FBI covering for Hillary Clinton. When he goes on national television after we found out Hillary Clinton's team deleted subpoenaed evidence, and he says, geez, we'll never know what was in those files. They were all just yoga and stuff, right? I guess unless Russia hacks them and releases it. The people that hate Trump said, aha, that's Trump calling for Russia to hack Hillary Clinton's emails. The people that support Trump are like, no, that's him making a joke, which that's what it was. Granted, I'm biased, but that's what he was saying. It's like, look, the FBI is never going to release this because they're in the bag for Hillary Clinton. So her enemies clearly hacked her. And it's similar. Like what Trump's saying here, whether, I did a big thing on this. For me, the most stark example of this was, there was this guy, I can't remember his name, but he was on Tucker or something one night, and this is maybe back in 2019, 2018, and he's talking about grenade attacks in Sweden and how there's these no-go zones and Muslim gangs in Sweden. He's talking about how, violent crime and assaults and rape are up like 50%, and he's doing all this on-the-ground reporting. So Trump, tweets out or something the next day, is like, terrible grenade attack last night in Sweden. And there was no grenade attack the previous night. What he was saying was directionally true, but was specifically wrong. The specifics of it wrong. But the problem
So what he said was wrong, right?
What he said was specifically wrong, but directionally he was highlighting a problem. So the Democrats could have said, look, there wasn't a grenade attack last night, but that's not what they did. What they always do is they say, no, that didn't happen, and it's never happening. That's just completely false. That's not what's going on. And then as an outside observer, you're like, well, actually, grenade attacks have increased. And there are significant problems with that's exactly what the Springfield, Ohio thing is. The mainstream media ignored this situation. The Democratic Party, the Harris-Biden administration ignored what was going on in Springfield, Ohio, because they directly caused it. The people in Springfield for over a year have been crying for attention because that community is being devastated. No one cared at all. And so then finally, they didn't. What stories?
This is news to me. I'll have to look more into it. You seem to be more informed.
Of course,
about this.
you could look. You could look in. There were town halls about their schools where there was 40% of the students or something. A huge percentage of the students in their schools couldn't speak English, which was causing significant resource problems at the schools. The traffic accidents were up. Crime was up. Homes. People were telling terrible stories of they rented a home for 15, 16 years and they were kicked out because the landlords realized because these illegals, or I guess not technically illegal, these Haitians were being subsidized that they could increase the rent because the government was basically footing the bill. These are all real problems that no one heard of because the Biden-Harris administration didn't care. So then Trump, instead of saying look, this girl was sexually assaulted or this person was killed in a traffic accident, he says something that has more of an emotional appeal. They're eating the cats and dogs. Is that technically true? Well, it's not definitively a lie. It's a claim that was made, but it's not the one he should have made.
Without evidence, right?
It's hearsay. Is basically what you can say. Hearsay is evidence, but it does not meet. I'll give you another. It does not meet my standard for threshold of a presidential candidate repeating. It'd be one thing if me or you said it, but if you're running for the highest office, maybe you should be a little more particular about making sure something's definitively true before you, or at least has much better evidence.
Yeah.
But that is evidence.
Or any evidence.
Well,
right?
It is evidence. Someone saying something, you saying, "I hear they're eating cats and dogs." This person said it. That's a form of evidence, albeit weak. It's hearsay. Nonetheless, I'm not going to quibble over
not in a court of law, but yeah.
Well, sure. That's
I hear what you're saying.
It might not be admissible, but it's still evidence. Anyways, the point I'm just trying to make is,
well,
he
what
said
I'm saying
something
is
that was
not
directionally true, and so you could even see it last night. I saw one of these big left-wing X accounts put the most disgusting thing last night that J.D. Vance said was that when I asked about this Springfield, he said he's concerned about the American citizens in Springfield. That was the most grotesque, disgusting thing. That illustrates exactly what the problem is. No one cares about those people. They don't look like the type of people. And so that's why Trump's making those claims. That's why Vance is making those claims. And you could say, well, it was hyperbolic on the specific that they were talking about. Maybe. But directionally, they're correct with the problem in Springfield, and the Democrats don't care. And instead of the Democrats saying, you're absolutely right, it's devastating what's happening in Springfield, but you're wrong on the specific that they're eating cats and dogs, they're saying, nope, this is racism, the Haitians are great, how dare you impugn them, they're there making the community better. That's their answer. Unless you want to point me to a prominent Democrat that's talked about the problems of the people in Springfield. I didn't hear Harris say it. I didn't hear Walz say it.
So here's my frustration, right? If the problem was really so bad, why do we have to go to rumors? Right?
Fair point. That's exactly the point I'm making. Why wouldn't objectively, right? Me and you, human to human, right? I don't know if you have kids, right?
I don't.
Okay, no. You have a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, something. You have something you care about, a wife, right? Okay, like what would be worse, them being killed or brutally maimed, or your dog being killed or brutally maimed?
I would rather have the dog suffer that, yeah.
So, objectively, if there are real stories of real people that have been harmed, and there certainly are, even if it was just a traffic accident gone wrong, you see those ads all the time, right? An illegal immigrant on a DUI, wrecked and killed, or his license has been suspended. That happens, right? You could argue whether or not that's something that should be brought up because it's more of an accident. Nonetheless, though, that's a true claim. You could easily find a person and make that claim. Wouldn't that be objectively worse?
I wish they would.
But the problem is that one of the things with Trump as a showman and sort of the way he speaks is he has these hyperbolic appeals to emotion. And I don't know what it is about humans, but they will go absolutely batshit crazy if you're hurting a pet. You could put video after video of someone beating a person, a gang beating the shit out of other people outside of a bar. And it's like, but you show that same gang kicking a dog, you're going to have the pitchforks out. Isn't that weird? Yeah. It's true though, right? That's the way we operate. And so there is something visceral about these people are so differently customed and cultured, and they don't connect with us so much. They don't mesh with us. They're eating cats and dogs. You don't really get that with they molested this woman. Because it's like, well, that's terrible, and that's worse than eating cat, but it's not as alien.
It's tough because it's like, well, if it's true that they molested a woman, but it's not true that they ate a dog, it's just weird that we would go for the...
I agree with you. I'm agreeing with that I would rather Trump say things that he has definitive proof of. And all politicians, I would rather that. But when you say, why did he do it? I'm telling you the reason why you do that is because it becomes more viral if you talk about animals being abused. And you could say that's unethical. Maybe it is. But I think that the idea that that's overly unique, that's politics, baby. That's how all of them do it. That's why they're connecting Trump to Project. That's what Hands Up, Don't Shoot was about. That's right. That's what I forget the girl's name, but the unfortunate lady that passed away because she took an abortion pill and then had negative reactions to it and then waited to go to the hospital. And then the hospital didn't give her good care. And yet that argument, she was killed by an abortion. That argument has become by Harris and Walz. I believe she was in Georgia, right? That she was killed because Roe was overturned. That is the opposite of the truth. And yet, instead of, no doubt there are women that probably, would you say, there's probably a woman somewhere that you could find that went to a doctor and was like, we don't know what we could do because of this law changing right now. But instead of taking the real story, they invert a story. And this happens all the time particularly I think it's worse on the left. You might disagree. Remember the UVA rape scandal that was in the Rolling Stone? Same thing. Yep. They went rape shopping. There are thousands of stories of women that are really raped, but they weren't as sensational. So they didn't tell a real story. They found someone that was telling the exact story that they wanted to spin the political and cultural point. And it turned out to not be true. So you're right. The way that I would rather get to a world, for me, when I ran for office, I'm not saying that everything I said was definitively 100% fact-checked. All of us make mistakes and say things. I do it all the time on my stream. I'll cite a piece of evidence that I see, and then someone might say, actually, upon further review, it's not quite as you're saying. So it's best practice to 100%, but that's not human nature. And, unfortunately, that's not how our politics runs. Sensationalism is something that's often used. That's why they're still saying Trump's Project 2025. Everybody knows it's a lie. No one cares.
I do wish they would stop saying that because it's clearly a think tank it's not directly tied to the Trump campaign. You know, you can claim that he wants to enact the policies, but it's not tied to his campaign. I wish they would stop saying that. I'm totally there with you. And yeah, I think if they're going to fact check Vance, which I think they only kind of did because they never said anything he said was wrong. They just kind of gave additional context.
But that's the game. But that's the game, right? Like, you understand who's the audience, right? What is the purpose of this debate? Well, you're trying to get people to vote for you, and the majority of the people you're trying to get to vote for you fall into two categories. You're trying to energize your base, right? So you're saying things that'll get them more enthused, and then primarily what the debate's for, though, are to get people that are undecided. And when you are the moderator, there is a tinge of sort of, it's like you're the supervisor. Your word means more than the debaters. You're the arbiter. And so when it doesn't matter if you say, I'm saying you're lying, when you're like, well, actually, they're here legally. The perception that someone who's not really following closely is, oh, Vance was wrong and Walz is right. And that's not at all what was going on. Like, Vance was making the point, technically you would call them legal, but that's because basically the Biden-Harris administration have used loopholes in this specific app to impose these. I'll give you the last word here, but I did funny. The call queue is cute. So I'll give you the last word here. I will, I promise. So go for it.
That's what's so funny to me about his response was he mentioned the CBP One app, which I'm sure he's kind of reducing what it actually does, but let's say that it does what he said as it does. And he says, he said something like that was, it's something that Kamala Harris created. The app he's talking about launched in 2020 under the Trump presidency. So I just thought that was funny.
Yeah. But
and they didn't fact check him on that, right? So
well, they didn't have time because they didn't expect him to clap back at them. So they shut off his mic and moved on to the next topic because they understand this is a weakness of the Harris. Like, regardless of what the people that call in here, the left-wingers that might disagree with me about immigration, the truth is that the American people are tired of it. They think that the border is unsecure. And it's not just racist white people. You can see video after video, predominantly black communities in the inner city that are fed up with mass amounts of people that don't share their culture being imported into their communities. And in their eyes, and I think correctly, being treated better. They're being given all these government monies and things like that. And it's taking away resources that they find important, whether you be black in an urban area or white in a rural area. This is an issue that's becoming a losing issue for the Democrats. And so the idea that the moderators are going to broach that by being like, well, what you said, Vance, was, racist, and it was smearing these Haitians, and so that's how we're going to cover this topic. And Vance does, I think, a pretty good job of taking that conversation to where he wants, where it's beneficial to him, and then to have the moderators try to get the last word like that. They weren't expecting Vance to sort of clap back. And I think Vance was right to do it. I thought, I would have done so differently, but I have a different personality to Vance. Like I said, I would have been like, would you like to bring another podium up so you could just stand next to your debate partner there? How many partners does he need? 3 of you is not enough? But
I think these right-wingers gotta well, not you, but like Vance and Trump, like you got to get a thicker skin, right? Like it's a poor craftsman who blames his tools.
Oh no,
right?
that's absolutely outrageous. Then I guess you could say the same anytime a Democrat claims that law enforcement is systemically racist. They just need to get a thicker skin, right?
I mean, I'm a leftist, so I won't get into what that means, but
right. The idea that I mean, come on. Do you think you want to talk about a thicker skin? What do you think the chances are that Kamala Harris takes a debate with someone who's ideologically against her as the moderator, like Tucker Carlson? What do you think the chances are she'd do that debate, or Joe Biden, or any prominent Democrat? Can you think of one of them that would debate a prominent Republican with Tucker Carlson as the moderator?
Let's not use Tucker Carlson because of the Dominion lawsuit, right? That taints his reputation.
What does that have anything? Okay, then let's not allow ABC, CBS, or anyone's that post the fake Trump said Nazis are fine people hoax, or the Hunter Biden laptop was.
You know what I mean, right? No, you know that I'm talking about the.
No, biggest I don't care.
Let me clarify.
I know what you're going to say. Tucker Carlson lied and was sued to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Bullshit. Fox settled the lawsuit because they're part of an establishment that wanted to push a narrative that was. They settled the lawsuit because they wanted to be part of a narrative that was to push the idea that you couldn't question the 2020 election, even though there were many things that deserved to be questioned. I don't think there was definitive.
Let's just say Joe Rogan, right? Let's use Joe Rogan as an example.
But the point I'm trying to make is you're making a meta point here that I think is worth addressing. The idea that Tucker Carlson is any less ethical or any more of a liar or anything like that than the average Democrat talking head that repeats verbatim all of the lawfare and propaganda that have come from people like Adam Schiff or James Comey or any of these other characters is ludicrous. The only difference is that the lawfare is designed to allow people that are against the establishment narrative, like someone like a Tucker Carlson, to be punished, or someone like an Alex Jones to be punished. But when you have, like, should we trust CNN after the Nick Sandmann lawsuit? They moderated a debate. They smeared him and lied about him, right? Right?
Was that an election?
What does that have to do with anything? Why could you trust them? They're clearly pushing a narrative.
I'm not sticking up for one or the other. I'm saying... But
those debates occurred. The CNN debates occurred.
Let me speak, Rob. I'm saying a campaign could easily say, well, we're not going to let Fox News moderate a debate because they have a history of lying about elections, right? And they have the receipts to back that up.
Okay. But I'm suggesting that what Republicans do is say the exact same thing about every establishment media organization. The New York Times, the Washington Post,
they
ABC,
could, yeah,
CBS. That's exactly what they should do. So the idea, what I'm saying is currently right now, we see evidence of them being propagandists, them being against Republicans like Trump and the populist movement, them lying, them spreading hoax, them not retracting that over and over and over and over and over again. And yet you're saying, well, that you should have a thick skin if you go on there and they decide to have biased moderation. And what I'm saying is, if we're going to have a conversation about thick skin, what do you think the chances are that Democrats would do the opposite? That they would go onto a platform that they think. But when I bring up Tucker Carlson as sort of a close to apples comparison, you're like, no, because he said things that lied about the election. So have the Democrats, so CBS, so it's the Washington Post. So
but that wasn't the question. The question was Tucker Carlson.
But that's why the comparison's apt. That's why I'm using Tucker Carlson. That's exactly why. Because if Trump's willing to, if the Republicans are willing to go into that battlefield, if someone like Trump and Vance, which they shouldn't do, by the way, I am against it, right? I think that what they should do is say we don't need moderators and give the format that I suggested earlier. So, but yeah, they won't. So the idea of thick skin's ludicrous. Now, I do agree with you that the ultimate solution, well, I'm not saying I agree. I think the ultimate solution is you don't have to complain about the moderators if you say, nope, we know you're garbage. We're not even going to let you in the room. Sorry. Yeah. And I hope that it comes to that. I really do. I don't think Trump will win. But if he did win, in addition to treating the FBI as the antagonistic organization that they are, he should certainly do so with the mainstream media. And not just saying you're fake news and criticizing them. He should put his money where his mouth is and be like, none of you get in the room with me. When I have press conferences, we'll bring in the local press. Who's the local Iowa paper? We're here today.
I would love that.
That's what they should do.
That would be awesome. Yeah,
But they should totally be like, we are no longer giving interviews to any of these mainstream organizations. Nope, sorry. That's what they should do. That's what's deserved. And it's not just me that thinks that. Trust in the mainstream media is at very low levels. I don't know if what's lower, that or Congress, which is fun.
There's definitely a bit of a trust crisis happening and deserved in many cases. I'll hop off. Can I ask you real quick, Rob, would you consider unbanning me from your YouTube chat so I can chat in YouTube? You can say no, but I'm just putting that up.
I don't know why you were banned. I don't know if it was me or something. It probably was me. I will try to figure that out.
We got in a little disagreement, and you banned me.
I don't remember, but I will try to figure it out and send me a message on X and ask for that so that I'm reminded. Do you follow me on X? Or send me a DM on Discord, one or the other, and then I will try to do that when I have time. But I'm such a technological noob. Yeah. Well, and I'm going to have to figure out how to unban someone on the chat. I'll be honest. I don't know how to do that. So I will try to do that, though. Okay. No problem.
All right. Well, thanks, Rob. I appreciate your time. Thanks for chatting with me.
All right. Thanks so much. Thanks, Chris. Yep. All right. I think I've written down. I'm trying to keep up. So next we have Bam Buddy. Can you hear me, Bam Buddy? Now, one of the things is people might leave as they're waiting for their turn, so I'm not upset about that. We'll give them a minute or two to get on, and we'll put them next in the queue if they're not on here. But, Bam Buddy, I don't know if you're talking. Your mic is muted, but you're good to go if you could hear me.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Rob. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. No problem. How's it going, man?
Yeah, it's going well, man. Going well. Thanks for taking the call in today, man. I'm a big fan of your channel. Sorry, I'm a little sick.
That's okay. Thank you.
So I actually wanted to call in to talk to you about, I heard from a couple different, well, it wasn't heard from them, but like I had seen a couple different reports from people in social media who were essentially saying that they were approached by the Kamala Harris campaign, and they were offered money in order to essentially just continue the narrative, right? And I'd seen people, at least in random comments and stuff on Facebook and all that were saying that that's a conspiracy theory, and she wouldn't have to do that, or yada yada yada. But then a simple Google search brings up a lot of different articles. Like a month ago, CBS, for instance, Democrat organizations paying influencers to help win over voters, and New York Post is the Democratic Party's plan to recruit 5,000 influencers. Bridge Detroit, reaching out to social media stars. The Washington Examiner, like all these different news sources, and it made me wonder, like, is that why a lot of these, because like social media is such a large umbrella. It doesn't just, it's not just Facebook, Instagram, but it's also YouTube and TikTok and everything. Is that why these people who are so dead set on rooting for Kamala completely ignore every bit of evidence that's actually pushed up towards them, that she's dishonest, or she doesn't mean what she says or anything?
I think that there's certainly part of that. I think there's a multifaceted thing that's going on, though. So certainly there are people, it is absolutely definitively true that Democrats, and I'm assuming Republicans to some level, they're always two steps behind, though, on this sort of stuff, are approaching people that they think are influencers and offering them money to sort of say things that are favorable to their campaign. I don't even know that that should something that bothers me that much. Is that any different, really, than paying someone to be in a commercial for you? Now, the unethical nature of it, I guess, would come on the form of the person who accepts the money and then is not disclosing, I've been paid to give my opinions on the election and I favor Kamala Harris, etc., etc. There is some ethical problems with that. But in general, I guess I don't have a problem. Like if I run for office and I want to pay Morgan Freeman to be like, I'm Morgan Freeman and I think Rob Noah is a tremendous, like, because he has an awesome voice, whatever, that it is what it is. That's sort of the game. I definitely think there's money in it. I think whether it be money directly coming or money that comes through saying things that sort of culturally align you with what a large portion of an audience that might watch you would be. And I think that section is more prolific. So, for example, in my little world here, I don't know how much you follow me, when I do a lot of these online debates, there is a PAC called Progressive Victory PAC. And their job is to pay people to basically influence people to make the Democratic Party more progressive and help Democrats win elections. And they've approached a lot of streamers in the space that are similar to me, people that are streaming on places like Twitch and doing debate panels, and they pay them. And you might say, well then, if I take someone like one of the people they pay is this guy, Wick TV. Is Wick saying what he's saying, embracing Kamala Harris because he's being paid? Well, yeah, maybe somewhat. But if he wasn't being paid by them, Wick's still going to support the Democrats. He is. And part of it is on brand. Part of it is, and it's the same's true of Trump supporters, though far, far less. But it is the best way to make money and grow an audience on these platforms. If you're going to delve, thanks so much, my Snola. I appreciate the follow. The best way to do that is to pick a side and always be on that side. For someone like me, it's tough to grow an audience because I'll call Trump out when I think he's wrong. I'll call Republicans out when I think they're wrong. If I just came on here and said Trump's always right, he's the best, my audience, I lost a ton of people when I was criticizing Trump during COVID because I thought he was embracing lockdowns too much. So, or you embrace the niche of I'm a never Trump Republican. I'm a DeSantis guy, and you stay in that lane, right? Those lanes are easiest and they get you the most views. And it's certainly even more true of a lefty on these spaces because the moderation in these spaces and the algorithms on these spaces are incredibly more favorable to left-wing people. And the audience that watches and consumes political content somewhere like here is going to be a younger audience that's going to lean more left. And so if you're just starting out now and you want to be a left-wing streamer or you want to be a political streamer, you have a far greater chance to grow your audience more rapidly if you're left-wing. If you're like, Trump's evil, he's the devil, Kamala's awesome. So in a roundabout way, that's getting money for your opinion. So I think that that's partly true, the direct payments and that. But there is certainly a lot of people that that have been gaslit into believing that Donald Trump is this unique threat. And they would be saying this stuff regardless if it gives them an audience or not, or if it gives them money. Money always helps. It always exacerbates. Let's say they go to a big Twitch streamer like iShowSpeed. I don't know much about iShowSpeed other than he's sort of an entertainment streamer, playing games, doing real world stuff. If he comes out and embraces Kamala Harris, maybe he would never do that unless he's paid money by Kamala Harris. But when it comes to a lot of these political streamers and stuff, I think a lot of them, even if it wouldn't mean them getting money in a roundabout way, they just viscerally hate Donald Trump. And not only that, a lot of them, that's their foundational ideology of who they are. Their entire worldview and ideology and how they present themselves to the world is hatred of Donald Trump. That's their brand. So it depends on exactly who you're talking about. I will say at the top level, like if you're talking about maybe an influence, like someone like, I'm just going to pick a name out. I'm so bad culturally. I don't follow music and stuff. But let's say that someone like Cardi B comes out and is like, yeah, Kamala all the way. Does she do that if she's not being paid in some way by Kamala Harris's campaign? I don't know. And I certainly think you're right that there are a lot of people that have been approached and paid in that way. But I do think that a lot of what you're hearing would just be repeated verbatim anyways, just because it's cool. It's an in-group preference. You get a bunch of friends. We live in a culture where you're told in social settings, don't talk about politics and religion. But the truth is, it's starting to change a little, but the way it has been is it is completely fine and acceptable to bash Donald Trump, to bash Christians, to bash white people, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right?
Right.
And so,
right. No,
absolutely. Ahead. For example, I'll give you an example. I did debate in college. I have debate was the left of the left. I made a lot of friends there that are vehement Democrats, vehement lefties, and they hate Donald Trump. If I go to a wedding and they're there, I would never bring up politics because I know they disagree with me and I'm not going to ruin someone's wedding, but they will. They'll throw it right in my face. How did you see what Trump said? Unbelievable, blah, 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 blah. And then it's my job to be like, yeah, I know, he's a bonehead. Anyways, how's it been? How's your dog doing? I have to be the one to eat shit. I have to be the one to move the conversation on. And that's the way it's been for a long time. You work in Hollywood, you have to pretend that you don't support Trump. Yeah, okay. And it's commonplace to publicly be like, Trump's the worst, he's horrible, blah, blah, blah. And the rest of us just have to be like, okay. Because you don't want to most people don't want to ruin social situations. You're having a fun time out with your company at a company picnic. You don't want to be like, actually, you're full of shit. You're embracing an authoritarian party that wants to censor us all. Because as soon as you do that, then shit's going to hit the fan, right? So culturally, it's just acceptable if you're going to start talking about politics, when it comes to most of now there are certain niche areas where, then it behooves you to be on the other side of it. But overwhelmingly, and particularly for young people that would be like influencers and stuff, it's culturally safe to talk about your hatred of Trump. It is not culturally safe to embrace Trump. And so, yes, it could be the money, but even more important than that is the cultural acceptance and the in-group preference.
Well, I'll tell you, man, that pendulum of social acceptance when it comes to rooting for Trump is definitely swinging back. I mean, I have just seen, it's been amazing over the past year, this resurgence of people who are actually willing to voice, no, I'm voting for Trump this year. There were people, and that it just on social media, that really was not a thing. But over the past year, that has drastically changed. Instagram, Facebook, X, all these different platforms. I think my main thing is, I understand, we're a capitalist society and money rules. So if you throw money at somebody for a campaign thing, or at least to stymie any kind of criticism of a candidate or bolster any kind of praise of a candidate. I get that. It just kind of helps me understand things a little more. But I think my main the main thing that's kind of blown my mind has been like, you know, there are people who like Destiny, for instance, right? I used to like watching his stuff, and I don't agree with him on a lot. I'm a pretty moderate guy myself, but I don't agree with him on a lot. But just seeing how vastly different the narrative that he's kind of, you know, spewed has changed over the past few years. That's really what kind of made me, you know, wonder, like, he's at least, I don't want to make any claims because it might not be true, but I definitely believe that dude's taking money because, you know, like, let's say for January 6th, for instance, right? Like, he's got a strong case that would make a conspiracy theorist like me take a second look at something, but then when you really look at everything, there's nothing that ties Trump to any kind of plan to overthrow the government. And that right there immediately makes it, okay, hold on, there's nothing here to truly tie this man to this thing, like he was a mastermind of it. But yet, even though he's been found innocent in court and there is literally no evidence, there is still this circumstantial plot that the left, like, you know, legacy media and a lot of these streamers really hang on, that he was behind it. But on the inverse, if I were to say something along the lines of, well, you know, more evidence has been coming out that, you know, Joe Biden and the Biden family took money from Burisma, and these are all just examples, right? But you see, like, you know, they're releasing paper transcripts of these talks, and they're releasing financial records that are proving that money has been going, you know, either directly or indirectly into his pocket, and yet, in the same note, you're a conspiracy theorist. You're wrong. There's no evidence. That's a baseless claim. And it just seems like, you know, there has to be a level of lack of self-awareness to make a lot of the claims that these people make. Like, they're not looking at the things they say through the same lens as what they look at the things other people say.
No, first to say, everyone has a bias, so all of us have a skewed lens. The key is to try to limit that bias enough so that you're able to see things in a as close to objective way as possible. But none of us will ever be fully objective. I try my best to deal with arguments and not people to a large extent. Now, that's not always how it shakes out. For example, people that I really respect or enjoy talking to, I hold to a higher standard. So if it's someone like Destiny or Pisco who I think are competent debaters, I'm going to be harsher on them and hold them to a higher standard than I'm going to be like someone who just calls in and doesn't particularly have a show. Or I'm going to be talking to my neighbor or talking to a left-wing friend of mine, right? Because those people aren't on my level. I don't mean intelligent-wise. I don't mean, you know, knowledge-wise. What I mean is they're not doing this like I'm doing it, like I'm streaming. I should know better because I'm talking about this stuff for hours at a time. And so is Destiny and so is Pisco. I always try to treat anyone as an equal who is someone who is a streamer that comes on a platform with me. So if I'm doing a debate or doing a panel, I think that the most fair thing that I could do is not treat them with kid gloves, to treat them like my equal. And that means holding them to the same standard that I would hold to myself. So I do give that level of sort of more criticism to the people that are streamers than just sort of the random people when I think that their bias is egregious. But what I try to do is focus on the argument primarily and not try to think that the argument is coming from a place of bad faith. Now, I'll say if I think it's bad faith, but I still try to deal with the argument because you still have to deal with the argument, even if it is coming from a place of bad faith, and even if it is coming from a place of incredible bias. The truth about Destiny is this. He is incredibly biased. His political view is that Trump is bad. And so, therefore, he has to align himself. He's an institutionalist. He supports the institutions more than he's a lefty, more than he's a Democrat. And so he will always defend the FBI. He will defend the experts in almost all fields. That's what he'll do. He'll defend the current establishment sort of regime that has power. That's what he's going to do. And that's why he hates Trump, because Trump's seen as a potential outsider and threat to that. And that's why he's going to hate other people that are seen as outsiders to that, even some on the left that he would see on that. Is he doing that because he's being paid money? Maybe, or maybe not. Maybe he's getting money in a roundabout way. He's not being directly paid, but it's what his audience wants to hear. And when he talks about this stuff and the more hyperbolic he gets, the more views he gets, maybe that's what he's doing. Maybe he just believes it to his very core. I don't know, but at the end of the day, does it make a difference in how I address his arguments? And I want to be careful to not accuse someone of something that I can't definitively prove. If I had to guess, I would say at some point, I know that Destiny's worked with groups like Progressive Victory PAC. I'm sure that they've probably paid him, if not a hotel room or a sandwich or something, they probably a good chance that he's received some sort of money. But it's really indifferent to me as to, how I deal with him in this argument. I think that he's incredibly biased, almost beyond hope at this point, with his visceral hatred of Donald Trump and the willingness to sort of view things in a hyperbolic way and say the most hyperbolic type of things. I don't really care if that's because he's just convinced himself of that or that's because of financial reasons. That's irrelevant to me. Now, it might be relevant to an audience that's trying to decide, well, how do I know I could trust the characters that I'm looking at? And for that, I say more power to people that want to look into things like that. I don't really care, though. And I've said, like a lesser example, I don't mean lesser as lesser of a person, but someone who's not as big of a streamer is, again, the aforementioned Wick TV. Wick, I don't know what exactly his financial situation is, but he's a streamer that maybe doesn't have the audience of Destiny. He's acknowledged that he is paid by Progressive Victory PAC. And if he's saying the things he would be saying anyways, I don't really see the problem with that. As long as he's being open about receiving that money. He doesn't strike me as someone who's incredibly rich. Why not make a buck? If Glenn Beck called me tomorrow and said, Rob, love the show, we'd like to send you $10,000 a month to stream on our network, would I be bad? Would all of a sudden I be unethical if I said, sure, I'll take that money? I think it would only become unethical if the reason I'm saying the things I'm saying is because I'm being paid to say them. But that wouldn't be the case. I would just be talking the way I am now and getting paid for it. And so, to me, the reason they're saying these things are irrelevant, I think that they are biased beyond comprehension. And whether it's because they're being directly paid or they're getting a bigger audience doing it or they firmly believe it, it's irrelevant to how I address the argument. But I don't begrudge people that want it. Certainly Destiny, he calls everyone that disagrees with him a Russian agent and implies that they're getting paid by Russians. So, it's not that that he shouldn't be held to the standard that he's seeking to employ on others, but it's just something that I haven't engaged in. So, I saw people in the chat saying their Destiny's admitted to taking money. Maybe, maybe not. I tried to only deal with things that I could directly see myself. That's why you won't see me bring up like people's family situations, like if they're going through a separation or, a weird dating scenario. I don't really bring that shit up because to me, it's about the arguments, So, but yeah, certainly a lot of the stuff Destiny said, it's troubling. It's a worldview that's very hyperbolic. It's constantly shifting. And I don't know if you saw the last time that I talked to him, it was on a Spaces, right? Their first Spaces that they did with him and Pisco, it's sort of the theme of it was sort of like, MAGA not having a leg to stand on when it comes to like calling out assassination attempts like morality and stuff like that. And I thought the irony of that was Destiny is basically in debates with me advocated for violence in the past. The first time I talked with him, he said, it was like the day 4 of the George Floyd riots. He said rioting and violence is the other side of the coin to voting.
Right.
To say that and then 4 years later, or, years later to be standing on your high horse about like, well, assassination attempts against Trump, who are Republicans to blah, 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 blah. Well, that's the point. You always blame our rhetoric, but you don't look at yourselves. And that's the exact point I'm making. If we're going to say, my standard is quite simple. I think that if you firmly believe that someone's really evil and terrible, you should be allowed to say it. And if some lunatic goes out and commits an act of violence that listen to you, I don't think you're to blame for that. I didn't blame Destiny for an assassination attempt on Trump. I didn't blame him. But what I find ironic is so many mainstream people, anytime there's a perceived right-wing shooter, they blame the rhetoric of Donald Trump or the rhetoric of Tucker Carlson or the rhetoric of right-wing streamers. It's stochastic terrorism. All I'm saying is the same standard should be applied to both sides. You spent years, and your side spent years blaming right-wingers anytime there was acts of violence from a right-winger. Now that we see assassination attempts against Trump, you're like, well, how dare you blame rhetoric? That's the point I'm trying to make. Destiny, who are you to call out these double standards when you yourself have made more hyperbolic rhetoric and talked about violence being acceptable? I know that he's later changed. And then, someone he associates with in Pisco, I talked to him about this, I think on air. It's thanks where I talked to him. And he was like, yeah, I'll ask Destiny about these things. Maybe he's changed his perspective. And Pisco ran cover for him on that Spaces. Look, you can change your opinion on if you think tariffs are good or not. But it's a hard sell to be like, I used to think that violence was the other side of the coin to voting, but now I'm totally against it. January 6th was appalling. I mean, that's a tough pill for me to swallow, that all of a sudden you give a shit just so happens to coincide exactly with the political narrative that you want to talk about. I'm sorry, it's difficult for me to accept that this isn't political expediency, as opposed to I've had a heartfelt change in the use of violence when it comes to political machinations. Like, kiss my ass. There's a slight chance that that's true, that that's what's going on with Destiny, but I think overwhelmingly that the odds are that it's because he's political and he's making excuses for his side. And for me, it's especially frustrating because I don't know how long you followed me. Back in like 2019, 2020, particularly 2020, I was doing all these crazy left-wing panels at the height of like the Black Lives Matter riots. And we saw all this violence previous to that, like left-wing violence on college campuses when Republican speakers would come. And I kept saying, like, you're playing footsie with like this violence. You're either acknowledging it and saying it's a good thing, or it's the language of the unheard, or you're ignoring it. And the inevitable outcome of this is the other side will eventually play that game. Eventually we'll see a right-wing riot. And when it happens, you people are going to lose your minds. And they were like, no. And now 4 years on, what are we talking about every day? January 6th. And by the way, it's the same thing. If Trump gets into office and he decides, you know what, I'm going to start a department of disinformation, and we're going to work with social media to censor things that are critical of positions I have, these people will lose their mind. They will lose their mind. Oh my God, that's so authoritarian. Can you believe it? And yet, when the shoe was on the other foot and we were censoring people that were talking about lab leak theories or children being forced to wear masks or vaccine mandates, they didn't give a shit. They didn't give a shit that people like me were being censored. So that's what I'm always trying to do, is to try to hold these people to the standards they employ, because they firmly believe that they are morally virtuous, that Trump is this evil, that the standards shouldn't apply to them. Look, if it's to stop it, is it okay to punch a Nazi? Well, violence is bad, but to stop a Nazi, and Trump is a Nazi. Trump's Hitler. So? And you need go no further than Destiny's Reddit feed. Go back after that first assassination attempt. I don't follow Destiny's Reddit, but people are sending me screenshots. Yeah. And there's people in Destiny's Reddit were saying, you know, like, as he's out there saying, you know, all Trump supporters F around, find out. Corey Compouture, basically, ha ha ha, he's dead, ha ha ha. You know, as he's saying that, you go to Destiny's Reddit and it's saying things like this. Well, we tried to pursue legal means to stop Donald Trump, but then the Supreme Court gave him complete immunity. So now we have to go outside of the law.
But they didn't even give him complete immunity.
I know they didn't, and they know that. But again, that's the hyperbole, you know, and that's, you know, so I'm not blaming Destiny for his audience saying that. I'm not. Like, there's unhinged people like Destiny. If one of those people would go out and do something, I think it would be regrettable. I think Destiny should go out of his way to say, like, look, violence isn't the answer. But if it happens, I'm not blaming Destiny. Like, he should be held legally accountable or anything of that nature. But what I'm saying is there are certainly people out there that, because they feel so morally virtuous, they allow themselves to not be held to any standard. Because the highest standard of all is fighting evil, and sometimes you have to do evil actions to beat evil people, and so therefore no standard applies to them. The only limiting principle on what they're willing to do to you is how evil they think you are and how much power they think is necessary to stop you. So they might think I'm evil less than Trump, but I'm still evil to an extent because I advocate for Trump and I'm somewhat persuasive, but I only have a limited audience. So there's no need to like attack me and get me to lose my job. But all of a sudden, if I was talking to 15,000 people a night in a live stream, then maybe the pressure on me needs to increase. And it would be totally justified in their mind. They would not care. I treat it the opposite. I say there are people with terrible, and by the way, studies after studies have showed this. Jonathan Haidt at Heterodox Academy, he's done study after study that replicated this. That basically the difference is the right thinks the left's stupid and the left thinks the right's evil. And when you think your opponents are evil, well, then you could justify any behaviors whatsoever against them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Hey, Rob, man, thanks for letting me call in. It's been great talking to you. I will call in again. I want to let everybody else that was waiting in line get in here. So thanks, man. You have a great night.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
All right. Reminder, if you want in to ask questions, I'll probably be going to 10:30 or so. So I'll put that link to the Discord up again. We still have some more callers to get to, but we can fit a couple more into the queue if you want. So next up we have Mo Farmer, to be followed by friend of the show Casimir afterwards. Mo Farmer, can you hear me, ma'am or sir? We'll give him a chance. You're muted if you can hear me. You have to hit the unmute button, but maybe you're AFK briefly. Good caller so far tonight. Enjoyed it. But yeah, the question of people getting paid, I think it's a fair question to ask. It's not something that I'm particularly concerned with, if I'm honest. And I try to not make those sorts of accusations. You know, I get accused of being a Russian shill or being paid by Russia or whatever. It's like, okay, dude. Like, I live paycheck to paycheck. There we go. What's up, Mo Farmer? How you doing?
Oh, not too bad. How are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thank you for calling in. Appreciate it.
So I kind of wanted to talk to you about the touch on the January 6th stuff at the debate a little bit, and also my argument about Snitch's views on not voting for Trump because of the false electors.
Sitch? You said from Adam and Sitch?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Go ahead.
So I think Vance did a poor job on the January 6th. Let's start with that. I thought he did a poor job on the January 6th stuff because he kind of dismissed it. But your argument was that him dismissing it was, let's move on. Why are we still talking about this? Was a better action. And I don't know that I agree, but...
Well, let me ask you this, just to get a sort of a framework for where we're coming. Do you think January 6th was an insurrection and that Trump engaged in it, or do you think that that's overblown and that's not what happened? Or somewhere in between there?
I absolutely think it was overblown, but I don't condone the violence that happened. Yet, I'm kind of with you on like the riots that went on for the entire previous year seem to be easily justified.
Okay, so this might be bad form, but maybe I could explain myself a little better by sort of going to a tangential topic. You remember when Trump, every time he would speak, people would be like, do you condemn Nazis? Do you condemn the Proud Boys? Do you condemn David Duke? You remember that? They would ask him that all the time. All right? And then he would be like, eventually he'd be like, David Duke, I don't know who that, well, yeah, I already condemned them. And then they would be like, oh, but he didn't condemn it. See, this time he didn't, it's easy to say, of course, if you ask me if I condemn racism, of course I'll say yes. Why can't he just come right out and say it? There comes a point where when these narratives are being pushed over and over and being used for a political cudgel, and in this case with January 6th, not only is the narrative being blown way out of proportion, but it's being used to censor political opposition, it's being used to treat them like an enemy, it's being used as a cudgel to win political battles, it's being used as an excuse to have the FBI target opponents as domestic terrorists. That's what's going on with January 6th. How many times do you continue to give oxygen to that topic? I went on to debate this left-wing streamer, Destiny. I don't know if you know of Destiny. You probably do if you know who Sitch is. So,
oh, yes, I know.
Okay, so Destiny debated Andrew Wilson on sort of, was January 6th an insurrection? And Andrew Wilson takes an interesting tactic where he's like, his position is, and I think the correct position is like, I don't give a shit what we call it. If you want to say the definition of insurrection is broad enough that January 6th meant it, but then also means that all sorts of other things are insurrections, like Black Lives Matter riots, then sure, we could call them both insurrection, and so now what? So the Democrats engaged in an insurrection, Kamala Harris promoted a bail fund for him, the Republicans engaged in an insurrection, Trump seemed to speak favorably to some of these people. Now where are we? Now what? Now what do we do with this? Why are we only focused on one? You know, and that's Andrew Wilson's argument. It's like, listen, if you want to concede that both these things are insurrections, fine, let's do it. Now what? Now where are we? Why do you only care about one? Why does the FBI only care about one? Why do the Democrats only care about one? What's up with that? They didn't care when Trump was being moved to a bunker and they were making fun of Trump, including Joe Biden, told Trump to go back to his bunker. Didn't care about that. They didn't care about Kamala Harris promoting a bail fund. Didn't care about that. That violence was all swept under the rug. And now when there's one instance of violence, and I agree with you, I think there were people that acted poorly on January 6th and they should be held accountable. But certainly it's being blown massively out of proportion. So Andrew Wilson does that debate with Destiny, and Destiny copes afterwards, and he says, Andrew wouldn't give a definition. He wouldn't give a definition. So then I'm not going to go through all the details I've done on the show, but he asked me if I'd like to talk to him about January 6th. I said, sure. I was at work and on vacation. As soon as I got back, I called him that day, had this debate. And basically the premise of the debate was he was upset because there wasn't a definition of insurrection given by Andrew Wilson. So I said, I will do that. I will give my definition of insurrection, and we could talk for as long as you want about what the definition of the term insurrection is. However, the agreement I would like to have is that I would like the second half of this debate to be about how I think this is applied in a two-tier system, and it's applied in a double standard. And whatever definition of insurrection you're saying that Trump meets, that same definition would have been met, or January 6th would have by Black Lives Matter and a bunch of other things that we didn't treat in this way. And I think that that's the more salient point. And Destiny agrees to it. For 5 hours, I sat there and talked about the definition of the terms insurrection, which is not a part of the debate that I'm interested in at all. You want to say all these things are insurrections? Fine, I don't care. Fine, whatever. What I'm interested in is the way that that term is applied to demonize certain people and to use lawfare against them in the two-tiered system. That's what I'm interested in. And so I do that 5-hour debate, and then Destiny rage quits when we get into 10 minutes of talking what I want to talk about. Immediately following that, I was inundated with requests. Right now in my DMs is Hutch saying, Rob, do you want to come on and talk about the Jack Smith court filing for tomorrow? Because the Democrats understand that this issue is an offensive issue for them. The more we talk about January 6th over and over and over again, the less we're talking about the record of Kamala Harris. The less we're talking about the economic and border record of Donald Trump. And so constantly, the people that control our narratives, such as these moderators and the Democrats, are going to continue to be like January 6th, January 6th, January 6th, January 6th, January 6th. What is the correct response if you're J.D. Vance? Yeah, let's dive deep into January 6th. Let's talk about exactly what happened and give definitive answers. And actually, it looks like that there were FBI informants that were there. We're still waiting on the IG report to see if they were potential agitators. And, you know, the chief inspector that was there, his name was Capitol Chief Sund. He said that there were all sort of problems that stemmed from the sergeant-at-arms that answered to Nancy Pelosi. And then there were all sorts of problems that came from the military that were connected to sort of General Kelly and General Milley, not Kelly. And, you know, do you delve deep into that? Because you could talk about that for 5 hours. You could talk about it for 10 hours. But who's the audience for that? At the end of the day, Vance had a very effective strategy. This election should be about the record of Donald Trump versus the record of Kamala Harris. Were you doing better financially under Trump? Yep. Was the border better under Trump? Yep. Was the world more safe under Trump? Yep. That's what it should be about. The more he delves into January 6th, it's only beneficial to the other side because that's an offensive argument for them. No one's going to vote for Trump because January 6th, but potentially people will vote against Trump for January 6th. And so I think that the best strategy to employ is just being like, hey man, we're looking forward. We're moving ahead. That's what we're talking about. You're talking about something 4 years ago. The American people don't care. This has been litigated over and over and over and over and over. And that's where I'm at on it. How many hours must I spend? By the way, the same people that are asking me to talk about January 6th over and over again, when I was talking about the corruption of Russiagate and the illegal spying on Trump, you know how many of them wanted to talk to me? Like one.
Probably none.
Pisco talked to me
Probably
somewhat
none.
about it. He made excuses and came across as a fool. But none of these other characters wanted to. We weren't having panels about it. They didn't care. And so what I would say to you is, yes, I think that if you're someone that thinks this was overblown and you would like to get into the nitty gritty, I think I've done a very good job debating people like Pisco, Destiny, for hours and hours. I probably talked to January 6th about those two alone for probably over 30 hours between conversations on X and conversations on these chats. I've talked in great detail. I've talked to him about what the definition of insurrection is, about the double standards, about what exactly happened on that day, about whether or not Trump was engaged with inciting violence. We've talked about all of that. But where does that move the needle at this point in your chance to bookend? This is the last chance that you get as a campaign to sort of address the American people in a situation where you're directly opposed to your opponents. And so I thought his answer was fine on January 6th. What more would you have wanted him to do? Do you think in his 2 minutes he should have delved more into the details?
I don't know that I wanted him to dive into the details. I just maybe bring up the fact that nobody was charged with an insurrection, and the Supreme Court, they used laws to lock up people that was overturned in the Supreme Court. I don't even know that all the January 6ers have had their trials and are not still setting out there. I've heard still waiting on trial for the situation.
Yeah.
Maybe if he would have just brought up slightly some point about that.
Think about this though. Like once you start talking about that, then Walz's countertext like, "Oh, so you're sympathetic to the insurrectionists? These people tried to overthrow the government, and now you're complaining about their treatment, right?" And then it gets so if you're out there and you don't know much about this, like you're just an average person. Like I saw this the other day. I think it was CNN went and like were interviewing people in like January 6th. The one guy was like, "What? February 6th? What? Yeah, I don't know. I guess some people engaged in violence. That was bad." Like if you start being like, "Oh, okay, well this particular person was jailed unjustly," like you're just making this an area of focus that I feel doesn't need to be. And then your opponents are going to be like, "Oh, you're sympathetic with the terrorist. You're sympathetic with the insurrectionist." I think the best answer in that format, where you basically have 2 minutes, is to say, "Look, we're trying to move ahead, but Trump said be peaceful. Trump ultimately did transfer power. Yeah, there were things regrettable that day, but ultimately it moved on. Biden's the president, but if you want to talk about attacks on democracy, look at what they're doing with the censorship." I thought that was a pretty good answer. I think the only part I would have liked seeing added when Walz made the comment about sort of defending violent insurrectionists, I think that Vance, it would have behooved Vance to be like, "You spoke highly of Black Lives Matter as they were engaged in riots, and your boss, the presidential candidate on your ticket, promoted a bail fund for them after they burned down a police station." So I'm sorry, it comes hollow from
there you go. That's maybe where I'm at. I thought he could have slid something in there a little bit just to you kind of see my point.
Yeah.
And to bring this back with the whole Sitch thing, I like Adam and Sitch's, and I understand they're moderates that probably lean left, I would say, but the whole point of him saying I can't vote for him because he caused this insurrection and had this scheme with these false electors. The false electors thing just blows me out of the water that they keep using this ammo and that there's more and more proof that this isn't true. You know what I'm saying?
Well, look, the false electors things was a legal strategy. You could agree or disagree with the legal strategy, but it was a legal strategy from people, in my opinion, that legitimately thought that the election was stolen from them, and they were trying to throw a last-minute Hail Mary legal strategy in order to get more investigations and more courts to look at what they saw as potential evidence of wrongdoing in the 2020 election. You don't have to agree with that legal. You could have been against Al Gore's legal strategies in Florida with the hanging chads in the 2000 election, but he had every right to do it, and it doesn't make him an insurrectionist. It doesn't. It was a legal strategy that he attempted to use, right? And so the idea, I think Sitch puts too much on. Now, I understand the implications. If the implications are Trump knew that he lost and he tried to steal the election anyways, then I understand how you could say, even if I think his policies are better than his opponents, I can't vote for him because he's someone who tried to steal democracy. That's not what he did, though, in my opinion. He legitimately thought he lost, and he tried to employ a legal strategy, and it may be a legal strategy that many people wouldn't have been a fan of. But I think that's far less egregious than the legal strategies the Democrats have employed to subvert our democracy, such as the insane amounts of lawfare that they've used against Donald Trump. And one of the things I'll say with Sitch is, I think that he has been very charitable, more so than is warranted, to organizations like the FBI and the double standards that they've done in their lawfare against Donald Trump versus his political opponents, such as allowing Hillary Clinton's team off the hook for literally deleting subpoenaed evidence, but then going after Trump and charging him with obstruction of justice for classified documents, for documents that they ultimately got their hands on. So, I've talked to Sitch about this. Unfortunately, it was on a platform that I found quite strange with P.F. Jung, who I like P.F. Jung, but it was, I don't know if you saw my conversation with Sitch on the false electors thing.
Yeah, I did see that.
It was unfortunate because I felt like that we couldn't delve into the details, but I respect Sitch's decision to not vote based on that. That's okay. I disagree with him, but I don't think he's an evil or terrible person for that. I think that he's at least tried to do research and he's came to a conclusion, and that's fine. I just think that that's not, I think that it's not a good extrapolation of what's going on. It's being very uncharitable to Trump and his team, and it's overlooking a lot of the shenanigans that went on Again, if you go back and you look at the alternate elector strategy from the Hawaii situation, and I believe the 1960 election, there's a lot more similarities than you're led to believe that what happened with the Trump situation. For example, Destiny and them have said, well, the difference is they were fake electors this time because they were sent to Congress and they weren't certified. But the same is true in Hawaii of 1960. The only person that could certify the electors was the governor, and the governor certified the Republican slate of electors. And yet the Democrats still sent their slate in. Now, ultimately, the Republican governor would change his mind days later. But at the time that the Democrats set their slate in, because they thought that it would be, the recount wouldn't have been done until after the time frame had gone through. And so they went ahead and sent their slate based on the definition that people like Sitch and Destiny are giving. Those were an illegal fake slate of electors. They were not certified. There was no legitimacy. And so they don't really have an answer.
Do you ever watch Nick Rekieta?
Yes.
Okay, Nick Rekieta was on their show probably almost a year ago, not quite. And
can I pause you just for a second to read a super chat? And then I promise I'll let you
Sure, go ahead.
Gingerous Prime, thanks so much for $10, says, I think what gets under my skin about Destiny is his dogmatic defense of government institutions, but he has no problem advocating for the destruction of social institutions and norms if they serve no purpose. Right, and not only that, like, he'll go against those establishment institutions when it benefits him. For example, he wants the Supreme Court's corrupt! Pack the court! Right? As soon as they have one decision that he doesn't like, well, then it's unfair. They're all involved in a conspiracy theory. But if you make accusations about the FBI engaged in a two-tier effort or subverting the intentions of the law by putting their thumb on the scale, then you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. But sorry, I just wanted to get that super chat in. You can go ahead.
No problem. That's the thing. He had the conversation with Adam and Sitch, and he was bringing up the point that I think needs kind of brought up there. And maybe I'm kind of advocating for you to try to get back on Adam and Sitch and try to have that longer conversation without P.F. Zhang there. And bring up these points that we're talking about with the, there's a deadline. You have to submit these electors within this time, whether they're certified or not certified. Otherwise, they'll never exist. And his whole argument, Sitch's whole argument is, well, see, he was trying to defraud half the Americans that voted for Biden, but on the other hand, the Americans that voted for Trump, that many of them thought there was something wrong with the election, whether it was legal loopholes, whether it was ballot stuffing or ballot harvesting, as they call it, they just did not get addressed at all. And
yeah, I know, but listen, I would talk to Adam and Sitch again on this. I wouldn't have a problem with it. But again, what I come back to is one of the things I see as a problem, and I'll have to let you go after this, but one of the things I see as a problem is that because these institutions are so powerful that sort of are in this establishment umbrella, it's like Mike Benz calls them the blob, they really control our narrative. They really do. Let me give you an example of this. Back in 2020, or maybe it was 2021. I think it was 2020. There was a bad ice storm. Yeah, it was during COVID, so it was 2020. There was a bad ice storm in Texas, and Ted Cruz's district was having a lot of power outages, and he was on vacation in Cancun. Now, simultaneously, while this was going on, you had all of these Democrat governors and leaders that were locking down their people while they were on vacation or at orgies or eating at the French Laundry, etc., etc. And yet every panel I went on that was a left-wing moderator that set the topic, they all wanted to talk about Ted Cruz in Cancun. Everyone, what about Ted Cruz in Cancun? And I was like, yeah, I guess it's bad look. Your district's suffering and you're on vacation, but I don't know what more there is to say. It's far less egregious than forcing you to be locked down in your home and then violating your orders yourself, like my governor, Tom Wolf, did. That's far more egregious. Why can't we talk about that? Nope, that's whataboutism. We have to focus on Ted Cruz and Cancun. They control the narrative, and I take the bait. I go on these panels. I talk about what they want over and over and over again. And so I'm trying to let my audience know that's the problem with this January 6th stuff. We're still talking about it. Still, you seem like a very intelligent, awesome person, right? You have legitimate things that you would like to be said about January 6th. I'm with you. I've talked about this, but we're 30 days outside of an election, and we're still talking exactly what the establishment wants. Still. That's still what we're on. We're still on January 6th. Jack Smith today has Judge Chutkan release another document on what? Alternate electors and January 6th. Every second that we breathe on this is a victory for the people that are trying to engage in authoritarianism and subvert the idea that people want to elect policies that are better for them. It is more lawfare, it is more propaganda that we're engaged in talking. So I probably won't reach out to Adam and Sitch. As I had said publicly, I have not ran from anyone on the debate on January 6th or alternate electors. I've taken on all challengers. That's it. I'm done. I'm not going to proceed to talk about the issues that they demand that I talk about. Talking to you about it's one thing. Talking on call-in show, that's one thing. But the idea that I'm going to take my limited time as it is and spend time on shows relitigating a topic from 4 years ago that I've literally talked for over 100 hours on seems to be something that doesn't benefit either me, the country, my audience, or the Trump-Vance ticket in any way whatsoever.
Okay, I can agree with that. And hey, it's great getting to talk to you tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate
I really
the call.
enjoy your show. I have to admit the reason I discovered you is because of Destiny, but before he went on his wild whatever kill Trumpers deal.
He was having a bad week. Like this is, listen, the difference is when you make politics that instrumental. The next guest I'm going to have on here is Casimir. Casimir's an ANCAP. Casimir is used to having political losses like every time. Casimir thinks I'm an evil statist. So imagine being an ANCAP and it's like, holy shit, you're watching that debate last night and you're hearing like, we should spend more. Like Casimir's got to be like rolling his eyes like, holy shit, but we know how to lose with grace. Right, the only time that the person I voted for a national elections ever won was Donald Trump. I was a big Ron Paul guy, but I don't flip out and spiral out of control and say F around and find out if you get assassinated. Blah blah blah. I don't do that. I try to, and Destiny isn't used to that. When you are basically a sycophant for the people that are currently in power and the institutions that are currently in power, you're used to always getting your way. And so you act like a crybaby when you don't. When the Supreme Court rules against you, you pout and kick your teeth or, kick your feet like you're a toddler. When you have a bad news cycle where a Supreme Court decision goes against you, Biden gets demolished in the debate, Trump survives an assassination attempt, all of a sudden Destiny was spiraling out of control because he wasn't getting his way. He saw the writing on the wall. It's looking really bad for the Democrats in this country. So he acted like a child. That's what he did. And then once he starts making these hyperbolic claims like talking about, Trump had it coming or Trump supporters have it coming and blah, 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 and I'm going to make fun of this guy from dying. What's he going to do but double down? That's the persona that he's built. He's not going to ever be like, you know what, I went too far. You're right. Cooler heads need to... He's not going to do that. That's not the persona he's built up. His audience won't let him do that. So he has no choice but to double down. And, I saw the clip of him the other day. He was saying, like, I don't think that people that vote for MAGA should even be allowed to vote in elections anymore. They should have their citizenship revoked. There's nowhere to go.
Wow.
There's nowhere... He has nowhere to go but more extreme. That's it. That's the only option, at least until the election's over. And that's why I tweeted out, the one bad part about Vance crushing Walz yesterday in the debate, right, was that people like Destiny will, all of a sudden, maybe they'll spiral out of control again because they look at it as a perceived loss. So,
oh, yeah.
Look,
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
I have one quick question that I would like you to maybe put on to Casimir. My friend's an ANCAP, and he thinks that he should vote for the Democrats so they can tear the system down faster so we can move towards anarchy. I wouldn't mind hearing you asking that.
I will ask Casimir what his thoughts are on that. But yeah, the idea of that's accelerationism, like bring on the collapse as fast as possible so that we could rebuild from the rubble. There's some truth to the idea. I say this all the time. For me, I think primary elections are more important than the sort of general election because particularly in deep red areas, we keep electing these scummy terrible, like globalist establishment Republicans. And so some of the worst Republicans we have are from the deepest red areas. And, you know, what I always say is when your back's against the wall, you can start moving in the right direction. But if you have allies that are really sabotaging you behind you, you could still fall further back. So getting rid of those people and getting your back against. Now, I don't agree with the concept of accelerationism, but I understand the theory, what they're saying. But hey, thank you so much for the call. We'll get to the aforementioned Casimir.
No problem.
Call back anytime. I really appreciated it. Have a good one.
All right. Have a good day.
Yep. All right. Someone did something. Thanks so much, Gideon Shornblower, for the sub. I really appreciate it. Your money is always accepted here. I am a greedy, greedy capitalist who works way too many hours and could always use money. Let's get to Casimir. Always fun to talk about. Kaz, can you hear me?
One moment.
No problem. So as he's waiting to come on, thanks so much, everyone, for the calls today. I've really enjoyed it. It's been an enjoyable show for me. I'll plan to go around 10:30. We have another caller on the line after Casimir. But I'll be interested to hear what his thoughts were and what he on the debate last night and sort of what topics he wants to talk about. It is interesting, though. Like, for me, there's a lot. Although Vance did well last night, I think he objectively won the debate. There's a lot to dislike if you're someone who's a small government person. Or a no government person in the case of Casimir, where, you know, it does seem that the transition that you see MAGA is sort of talking about big government interventions. What's up? Who's that?
Whoa.
There's Kaz.
No. I'm not no government. I'm private government.
I'm sorry. You're right. We've had this conversation before. But real quick, Nico Pluto, thanks for the $5 super chat. Please tell Kaz I said hello. And hi, I haven't seen him for many moons. I miss him. That was Nico Pluto telling you hi, Kaz. So.
Nico is amazing. Thank you, Nico.
Guy.
You're the best. You're the greatest. Absolute Chad.
He is great. And and I'll keep saying he's great as he's sending more money in. Always good for me. No, Nico, you are great. Thanks so much. So what's
You're
on
in
your
the
mind?
big leagues.
What's on your mind, Kaz?
What's on my is obviously they're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats of the people that live there. And you guys are absolutely wrong. The debate is going to be forgotten. Harris is going to be forgotten. That crazy guy with the inverted smile from last night is going to be forgotten. But people are going to remember that quote because it's funny.
That's true.
And funny is correct.
Well, and that's sort of the point I was making. It's a viral moment. Like, I didn't say that it was funny, but that's definitely true. And it's sad that it takes something like that to get any sort of national curiosity to the people of Springfield. Well, no, I mean, it's sad that no one gives a shit. No one cares about these people at all. Like, they're flyover country. In my state of Pennsylvania, there's a small community of 4,000 called Charleroi having the exact same problems as Springfield. They're importing all of these Haitians. No one gives a shit. That's why I started to stream in the first place. Like, I don't really... Like, politics is an interesting... I love debate, and politics is an interesting hobby for me, and I think that it's important, don't get me wrong. But I would be well at home sitting there drinking beers, bitching about the Pittsburgh Pirates at my local pub than I would talking about any of this stuff. And what I saw was I was someone who was a pretty good debater and I was opinionated on political matters, but I always thought it was incredibly sad that everyone that I grew up around in rural Pennsylvania that I think are the salt of the earth, greatest, nicest people in the world are treated like shit by every single institution in this country. They're living on scraps. Our communities are falling apart, and still they're treated as the enemy. And I think that it's fucking despicable. And so I think the Springfield situation perfectly exemplifies that no one gives a shit. No one gives a shit about the problems of that community. The problems they were already facing with the sort of economic problems and, you know, issues like that. But now 1/4 of their population is imported from Haiti, and no one gives a shit. They're just expected to suck it up and take it. And finally, Trump says something that's really funny, like they're eating the dogs and cats. And now there's at least some sort of spotlight put there. But the narrative becomes racism, you know?
Somebody said Russians in the chat. Excuse me, I'm half Ukrainian, okay?
Yeah. Oh, that's even worse. You're holy shit.
I'm subverting your democracy, okay?
Yeah, there he goes. By the way,
Listen,
full disclosure,
let me
I've
know a
received
short
no
story.
rubles from Kaz for this stream. So.
Yeah. So I opened up, I think it was Breitbart, their website tonight, and they have a top story. Some no-name Democrat I don't care about, some demon, slapped his woman 12 years ago.
Harris's husband, yeah, that's who it was.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Based, whatever. Based. Some
She
guy
had it
was
coming.
based and drunk one night, right? And slapped the lady around, and so hard that she spun, which is not that difficult when they're drunk. Not from personal experience. But here's the problem here. They're taking away 50% of your income. A good percentage of it, they turn into this inflationary, imaginary money that they're giving their cronies in the banking system to buy real estate, to buy properties, to buy companies, to outbid you on everything. You can't even reproduce properly. You can't have a proper job. You can't, because of the amount of money they're stealing from you, and we care about how they treat their women. This is the last thing I care about is whether he's a misogynist or not. The last thing I care about is how he is in bed or whether he has ED or whatever. I care about the fact that they're robbing us blind.
But you're not.
That's what we should be caring about.
You're not the target audience. Neither am I. I agree with you. You shouldn't give a shit that they're eating the dogs and cats either, to the extent that you find it's funny, which is fine. But the problem is, for me, my big issue is corruption. I agree with you. I think those issues are incredibly important. And it goes to corruption. It's cronyism, right? That's what's going on. When I talk about corruption and I'm talking about sort of a weaponized FBI, no one gives a shit. That's the real truth. When I talk to my neighbor, he did not give a shit. When I'm like, oh, this Russiagate stuff, it's bullshit. And they're spending all this money. Look at Solyndra. And, they spent all this money. They're taking your money. He doesn't give a shit. You know what he finally cared about? When he fucking got locked down for COVID. Then he cared. Then it was, I had all these people that were like, I don't give a shit about politics. And all of a sudden it was like, my mom's in the nursing home. I can't go visit her. I can't have a funeral for my, grandfather that died. I can't go to work and provide. Now all of a sudden people were paying attention. But still, how quick we forget. That should be a topic that we're still talking about. But we don't talk about it. And so the truth is, a lot of these stories that I think are basically bullshit and mean almost nothing become of national renown because the average voter isn't capable to understand sort of the ideas of fiat currency and sort of how we're being screwed over by a Federal Reserve that's literally lending money to their giving money to their friends. And we're like, oh, they're just printing money. It's fine. When in reality, they're screwing you over. And you don't understand why you're paying so much more for a gallon of milk anymore. But that doesn't hit home. You're paying more hits home. But let me just ask you straight up. Do you think that the policies that you heard Donald Trump and J.D. Vance put out there when it comes to inflation, are you impressed? I'm guessing not. I'm guessing you're like, it leaves
I'm not impressed, but I'm sort of more fine with them. It's a bit difficult. So their policies make sense within this insane world that we live in, where without solving the underlying issues that I highlighted, so what does Make America Great Again? Let's cut to the chase. 1912, America was great. 1913-14, America became garbage. And this is the core of the issue. People don't understand this. And so because they don't understand this, they offer these solutions. We need to build more housing. We need to build more housing. No, you need to build more nuclear power plants. You need to drill more oil. You need to get the banking system in order. And then everybody will be able to afford their own house. That's not the issue. I don't care that people from Haiti want to cross the border. I mean, I don't like their culture, but I don't care if they come here. I care the fact is they're afforded welfare.
Right.
They're literally aggressors coming in. This is what many libertarians don't understand. If you're coming in here to accept welfare, meaning to rob other Americans, you're an aggressor. You should be booted out. I can boot you out, and I won't violate any NAP and nothing. Open borders doesn't mean you allow aggressors in and want to rob you. That's not what it means.
Well, right.
So this is all distorted. And like the guy that said, "Oh, I have a libertarian friend that told me just vote for Kamala Harris to accelerate things." That's a Fed. That's a Fed. Instant Fed detected.
Yeah, but things can always get worse. Well, I, as someone who's not as well read as you on a lot of these sort of ANCAP or libertarian principles, for me, sort of the person that I first heard that I respected that illustrated sort of the problem you're talking about is Milton Friedman. And Friedman, basically, to boil it down, was like, you could have open borders or you could have a welfare state. Pick one. right? But he advocated sort of an open borders type policy, which was, if you want to come here for the sweat of your brow and work and, achieve greatness and by your own sweat of your brow and labor, fine. We should accept you. You'll be a net benefit to our communities. The problem is you can't then offer welfare, even if you don't offer those people welfare. What happens then is if you just offer people in this country large amounts of welfare, then they'll choose not to work, which means that then you have to import these people to do the work. And those people's labor there's been stolen from them now to support you, who's choosing not to work. Why should you be able to steal their labor just because you're a citizen of this country? So he was all for, and obviously this was an incredible economist. I'm grossly oversimplifying, but that was the gist of what he was saying.
No, he's garbage.
Well, I liked him, but nonetheless, I think that principle.
No, he's all right. I'm playing it up. It's a little bit hyperbole. But listen, no, it's stupid though. It's almost too dumb to be an open borders libertarian. Like, on principle, I have to say yes. I have to say, stopping somebody at the border is aggression on principle. But also on principle, if they're an aggressor, I don't give a shit. Like, I shouldn't care about two criminals stopping each other. Like, I should be tactical about what I oppose. Like, the number thing that I should be opposing is the Fed. Sort of Ron Paul, broken machine, and the Fed, how did the Fed, and that's how you're supposed to talk about these topics.
Sure.
And if people want to live in socialized housing, if they want to live in a project, then it's very dumb. I really don't like these ideas, but I do understand the desire to have cheap housing. It's just the solution is retarded. I'm sorry, it's stupid. The solution is dumb, but I understand the impulse. And there's a lot of libertarians. Frauds that don't understand, well, we need to solve these problems. Oh, they want socialism. No, what they want is the goal. You're supposed to, as a libertarian, offer them the alternative solution, which is the proper one, which is and the bankers. Right. And they're identifying, they're saying the bankers are buying up all the real estate. Well, it's because they have access to fraudulent money. I can't show up to a bank and say, here, give me 11-to-1 leverage.
Right.
Nobody's going to give me that money. But if I'm connected to the politicians and if I have a hedge fund behind me, suddenly I can over leverage like crazy. What is leverage even? It's fraud.
Right.
It's just absolute fraud. And we all accepted that.
Well, I think something you said that resonates is within the crazy system we have, sometimes even policies that you would disagree with on principles sort of make sense within the framework that we're operating in.
No, I'm not going to oppose them. It's stupid for me to oppose them. I have bigger fish to fry. Right. I have bigger problems. And this is accelerationism. I'm supposed to use the time that I get to arm myself, to arm my family, to arm my friends with both guns and knowledge, to move everybody I can to New Hampshire, to move everybody to more free states, to make more nullification. Those are the good things. Everything else is irrelevant. Why would I fight on irrelevant issues?
Yeah, and it's something that I try to explain to people. I thought strategically a debate that I did recently kind of made me furrow my brow, and that was when, I don't know if you saw, I debated Jim Bob on the 19th Amendment, should women have the right to vote. And I think that the point I'm trying to make is this. I consider myself, I don't know what I am, a libertarian adjacent, minarchist, something like that. You're an ANCAP. We got the paleocons. We got the Christian nationalists. To me, the current system is so screwed up that the biggest fish are all of us moving together in the same direction to oppose this. Now, there will come a point, if we are successful enough, where we will diverge. There will be differences, and they will be differences that matter at some point. But in the current system we have with all of these problems, all of these groups, although their end games might look kind of different, the direction that all of them want to go is in the same direction away from the current authoritarianism that we see now that is robbing people blind and sort of infringing on them. And so that's why, for me, particularly in an election year, my focus is sort of trying to build that coalition and to try to convince people. I think some of the big issues in the argument you're making, the economic argument, I think is absolutely true. Right? I think another issue is Mike Benz approaching it from the idea of, look, the establishment wants to censor your ability to dissent. They don't want you to have free speech. And if you don't have free speech, what are the chances that you're able to affect politics going forward? And a lot of people talk about the importance of the Second Amendment. If you don't have the right to
no,
defend
this
yourself,
is Rob, this whole thing, this smells like the Russian scenario. This is what the Russian regime, this is why accelerationism is an absolute ridiculous idea. You just have to look at what happened to Russia. They had a period of freedom. They had a period of economic freedom. They lacked the culture of guns. They lacked the culture of the Second and the First Amendment. And because of that, people were just literally physically beaten into submission.
right?
Time after time. It was small censorship, then it grew, then you couldn't post, then you became a foreign agent for expressing the wrong opinion, then they made, blacklists, and then eventually the government just simply shut down everybody. And now there's no opposition whatsoever, and they can do whatever they want, and they're sending whoever disagrees with them to the front to be cannon fodder. And this is exactly what the Democrats and some Republicans want to accomplish in the United States.
And that's why,
It's a very open program.
It is so corrupt, and these issues are so important that I find strange bedfellows. Like, what would I have in common with RFK? Like, when you look at the policies that he would advocate for more domestically, I'm going to be at loggerheads with him on most of them. But the ideas of, listen, sort of this corruption, this censorship, this putting their thumb on the scale and sort of controlling the direction that our politics go, and, free speech, and those are issues that I'm willing to accept that alliance. I'm like, yeah, that we do need to move in those directions. I think that anyone who's confident in their ideology should support free speech, because you would say, if I get a chance to speak, I will have the ability to persuade people. I will only lose when the game is rigged. And right now the game is rigged, and it's going to become much more rigged if the election doesn't go the correct way. But I got one more caller to get to, but I wanted to ask you, Kaz, because I know I've talked to you quite some. What are your feelings on the election now that we're 30 days out? Do you got a gut feeling what you think's going to happen?
I think that if you look at actual people that do research, like Richard Barris, people spun it, look at his statistics. In reality, Trump is absolutely crushing. He's going to win in a clean election. He's absolutely destroying. Harris is a nobody. Nobody likes this regime. Walz didn't help. It's all a fraud. And the reason why the fake and fraudulent polls maintain, it's so close, is in order to, to use their administrative resource to the very end to either convince people to not go to the polls or to manipulate the count in other nefarious ways that we all know about. That's why they have to keep the illusion that it's close. I don't think it's actually close. And the reason why is because, the WASPs are all going to vote for, close their nose like that and vote for Kamala. But Latinos are increasingly shifting towards the Republicans. In the current, I think, percentage is 40-60, which is immense. It totally undermines the demographics is destiny idea of the Democrats.
Right.
And this is affecting this election. Same thing happens to African Americans. Same thing happens to Jews. Same thing's happening to the Chinese community. They're all shifting hard right to the point where if you look at a Democrat in Brooklyn, she's like a Chinese woman, most of her talking points are Republican talking points. Strong police, law and order, remove insanity, anti-woke. And then she's a Dem because that's the only party that theoretically can win. But everything is shifting to the right. And the only reason, but there is a chance for the regime to maintain control by using the fact that they control the polling stations so hard. And they're trying to do it with law. You should explore that part. They're trying to push laws where we won't be able to have observers from the other party. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I'm sort of optimistic, but at the same time, I think that they're not scared of the American people enough, and that could spell tragedy.
Yeah, I don't think they'll let them win. I think that we'll still see more propaganda. I think that ballot harvesting, whether it be above board or not, it's hard to deal with because ballot harvesting basically allows the lowest information and lowest effort voter to vote in mass. I don't know how well those people show up in polling. But I agree with you. I think with the people that are sort of likely voters, I think that Trump wins in an election that's above board without the concerns of things like ballot harvesting. We'll see, though. And I think that what you're saying, there's a lot of that's true, too, to sort of the cultural pendulum switch. I think a lot of the identity politics game that's been used by these institutions to keep people on board for so long are sort of falling through, and they'll only be able to keep up the charade for so long. But all the more reason for them to win elections in the short term and then control what people are able to say. Then they're more able to control those cultural narratives, which I think they see the importance of right now. Because it is true. A lot of, some of the people that are the most concerned about the border are Hispanics. Some of the people that are most concerned are people in inner city black communities that see what they see as favorable treatment for people that are coming in from overseas and not doing things the right way. So I think that you see that narrative starting to shift, and arguably, and not even arguably, I think that's more important than anything Trump could do in 4 years. Just not them not being in charge and advancing the ball on this corruption, even if Trump does nothing. I think that's the most important thing that Trump could accomplish. But I think that cultural momentum is what I'm most excited for, that people are starting to wake up. And you're absolutely right. Democrats are now being forced to basically run as Republicans who like abortion. That's basically what they have to. Oh, we're Second Amendment. Yeah, it's important. We're not going to take your guns. And we're all about energy production. Drill, baby, drill. Yeah, yeah. Now, of course, they won't do it. They'll lie to you.
Do note. Neither candidate said the word nuclear once.
Isn't that crazy? I thought Vance was going
to say. Not even as weapons.
Yeah. I thought Vance was going to, when climate change got brought up, and he said, we need to drill more domestically. I thought for sure the next line was going to be like, and also Democrats historically have opposed nuclear, which is the
you know who's paying the bills? It's the Koch brothers.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
But hey, man, the last thing I want to say to you, Rob, is, this is especially important for candidates and races where you're not winning just because of where you are. You have to say base things, even things that are semi-silly, like repeal the 19th. Because when you say base things, when you say bold things, you're appealing to an audience. People hate the gray. Especially younger people. You need to be bright and shining and burning with a passion.
Well, two things.
And then you attract attention, even if some people think that's crazy. Well, those people will follow the orders of the people that are crazy anyway. Well, they're just followers. We don't care about them.
Three things. One, you see, I'm assuming that Hutch's show ended or something, and now his audience came over here on YouTube, because we have a bunch of people that are saying I'm a MAGA piece of shit talking directly to the Kremlin right now. So thank you so much, Kaz, for being the Kremlin ambassador. They're always
just because I have a Russian accent, it means I'm in Russia, and I can't be in New York City.
Yeah, so that's the high tier people you see that come in here from the left. So good for them. Other things I'll say is I don't disagree with you. That's sort of the effectiveness of Donald Trump in 2016. There was a lot he had going for him, but his boldness and to be able to not be held by basically the restraints of self-censorship and to basically say, fuck you, I'll say what I want. How about that? There is an appeal to that. There's even an appeal to that, the people that don't agree with the topics he's talking about. There's something ingrained into us that's like a masculinity trait that you're like, oh, yeah, look at that guy. That's some leadership. It's like, fuck you. I don't have to listen to you. I'll say what I want. And Trump oozes that, and I do think there's an importance for that. But two things I'll say on it real quick. I don't think that sort of turning off half the electorate, because I think that there are reasonable women out there that would be like, holy shit, I'm on board with 90% of what these guys are saying. But when I hear them saying, and ultimately our goal is to make sure that women can't vote, although that might be bold and drum up some support from the base, I think it does more of a net damage. However, what I will concede to you is that I think that the important part is to be authentic, sort of the old capitalist mindset, which is that we're all specialization. We're all good at certain things. And I think that oftentimes what you see is people try to be things they're not. I'm not Andrew Wilson. I'm not Jim Bob. Neither are you. I'm not Casimir. I'm not going to be able to effectively articulate, the need for massively limited, just private government as well as you or Fabian, right? But I'm me, and I'm good at what I do, and I talk about the issues that I think are important, and I don't think you would sound good as me, and Andrew wouldn't sound good as me. So I agree with you.
Oh, absolutely. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of these politics and who said to what to whom in which conversation in the car. You absolutely take all of that and take all those demon shills in chat and enjoy them because I know you do.
Yes, I love it. I'm just waiting for them to call me Rob GPT. That's the next cope. It's always good.
Nice.
All right, Kaz. Hey, always great to talk to you. Hopefully we'll talk soon. I'm going to do a 24-hour show the Saturday before the election. I'm going to need guests for that, so I'm sure I'll be reaching out to you, see if you want to come on for an hour for that show.
3 pagers to every Democrat in chat.
Yes.
3 pagers.
Yes, why not? Oh, and by the way, Kaz has paid me with Russian money to say that. So
Yes, and shekels. And shekels.
All right, man, take it easy. Nice talking to you.
Cheers.
All right, we got one more caller in. Andrew, thanks so much. Can you hear me, sir?
I can. Sorry, I was listening to the stream on loud, so I had made sure that I was ready to go.
Thank you. Hey, so what's on your mind tonight?
Oh, no, just, I'm disagreeing. You had your VP debate call-in show. Just listen to the last listener. How many rubles are you getting paid after that one?
No, you know me, man. The problem is here in rural Pennsylvania, it's hard to find an exchange market. So, I don't know. I just keep them as sort of souvenirs. The true story, I had a friend when I got married who travels a lot overseas. And so for a wedding gift, he gave me a bunch of like really low denomination currency that he's gotten from like Mongolia and some other countries. And then as the real monetary gift, he gave me a check, but he forgot to fill out the check. So I thought it was like a humorous joke, like, it's a bunch of money that's basically worthless in a blank check. I thought it was funny. And then like 7 months later, he got in touch with me. He's like, did I forget to like sign him out on that check? And I was like, well, yeah, I didn't give a shit. He's like, I feel like such an asshole. I just stiffed you. I was like, oh, I don't give a shit. I thought it was funny. But yeah, I've received no fiduciary compensation from Russia or any other country. The only money I've ever got in parts of any of my politicking or streaming are super chats, subscriptions, and things like that. So no rubles for this guy. And Casimir is no Russian, I assure you.
Interesting. I was just listening to the back and forth between the last 2 callers. It's pretty cool that you do this call-in show and you have this opportunity for people to talk to you. So what is your I responded to your tweet. Obviously, you think J.D. Vance won the debate last night. I'm curious to find out why you have that take, and I guess we can start there.
Because he was better in 3 phases. He was better objectively with a matter of sort of the facts that were presented there and how it came off to the people. He wins on that, the substantive area of the debate. He wins optically. Walz comes off as nervous. Vance came across as very likable. Walz was even agreeing with him many times. He wasn't the weird demon that the media and the Democrats have tried to portray him as. And so he came across as far more confident, as even you see many Democrats acknowledging. But the third and most important reason is because these debates aren't about who objectively wins in a sort of, factual manner, who wins on the substance. It's about having a goal and trying to achieve it. The goal for Walz was to try to paint J.D. Vance as being the yes man to Donald Trump, who is a crazy authoritarian dictator that wants to take away women's right to choose and will end democracy as we know it. He didn't do a very good job of that. Even you see Democrats that are acknowledging that they think that he should have attacked him way more. I don't think he did a good job of that. The goal of J.D. Vance was to finally label a Harris-Walz administration or campaign that's basically been all but hiding from the American people, to label them as what they were, which is just an extension of the Biden administration. They're trying to run a campaign of change when they're the de facto incumbents. And I think J.D. Vance won that argument about as flawlessly as you can. Every single time that he said Harris is the current administration, she's been there, why didn't she do all of these things? There is zero pushback from Walz that she's not the policies of the Biden administration. And then Vance goes even further to say, if this election is about the record of Donald Trump for 4 years versus the record of Kamala Harris, how are you with the issues that most people care about? The economy, it was better under Trump. How are you with the border? It was better under Trump. How are you with foreign policy? The world was peaceful, now it's on fire. So I think in all 3 of those aspects, Vance clearly wins.
So it was optically inconfident, the fact that J.D. Vance attacked the campaign, and then the fact that he focused on Vice President Harris's responsibility for the situation.
I said that he won the substantive portion of the debate, the substantive things they were talking about. He won the optic portion of the debate, and he won the strategic portion of the debate where he was able to achieve his goal where Walz was unable to.
Okay, so I disagree with that. So obviously JD Vance is well versed in debate. He's been doing it his entire political career. He went to Yale to become a lawyer. I even said this when I was reacting to it, that on presentation, JD Vance is going to sound better because he's more experienced with the debate structure itself. I mean, this is Tim Walz's very first national debate. He wasn't in there really to attack JD Vance. He was more in there to relay the policies and principles of Kamala Harris, and I actually think he did a very good job of that. I think Tim Walz stumbled in the early portion of the debate in the first question because it was a very loaded question. I mean, if me and you were asked that Middle Eastern question, me and you would likely stumble on this. I would admit to that. Like,
I'm a pretty good debater.
You know what I mean? Exactly. So I know for a fact.
How could you not know that question was coming, given that there was an attack that day? That would have been the first question that I was prepared for. So I don't agree with the. But I feel it though. But he wasn't also prepared for the same day news of China. So it showed for both instances that while the news was coming out for the day, I mean, he was prepared to relay Kamala Harris's policies and legislation. Not to interrupt you, but I'm unaware. What same day news of China?
Oh, because it came out in Minnesota News, Tim Walz and being in China in 1989.
The Tiananmen Square. So, I'm sorry. I thought it was referenced. I was like, holy shit, China's connected to Iran or something with this.
No.
I misunderstood.
No. Yeah, I'm referring to the two instances where I'd say that like Tim Walz was like weak, but it's kind of connected in the same sense that the news came out like right before the debate had started. So to process that, I think again Tim Walz stumbled a little bit at the start, but he brought it home at the very end of his argument. What he was trying to relay that we're through coalition building and what the Biden administration has been able to do with allies, they're going to be able to directly address those situations in the Middle East. Also, one of your points of Kamala Harris is, I just fundamentally disagree with that because Kamala Harris is the vice president. This is not her cabinet. It is Joe Biden's cabinet.
When did Walz say that?
Joe Biden's positions. Say again?
When did Walz say that?
No, I'm disagreeing with your second point.
Oh, no, what you're doing is, what you want to have a debate about whether or not the things I'm saying that I believe about Kamala Harris being connected to the Biden administration.
No, this is your debate point.
My point is, you apparently, this is what I thought you were doing. You were going to say that you thought that Walz won the debate, and now you're making arguments that Walz never made. Walz all but conceded that Kamala Harris was there and it was her administration. He all but conceded that. So for you saying
when did he do that?
Every single time that JD Vance said Harris has been there, Harris is part of this administration, she was there. There was zero pushback.
I believe he didn't push back because it's not her administration.
But he didn't push back. So you just say So your argument is everybody knows that's not true, so he doesn't even have to respond. That's ludicrous.
No, my argument is that Kamala Harris is the vice president of the United States. It's
Walz
not her
didn't
cabinet.
make that argument. Walz didn't make that argument, and
he didn't have to. He did not have to because it's common knowledge.
It shows that you're so unobjective in looking at this debate that you're literally putting your own bias in it and saying that Walz did well by not even. That is bias. You're literally if you didn't know whether or not Harris had any control over the campaign, and you just watched this debate, which we're talking about evaluating this debate, you're telling me that if you didn't know that, you would have, from Walz's performance, said, "Oh, of course Harris didn't have any decision making in the Biden campaign; she was just vice president." That's the direction you would have came out watching the performance of Vance versus Walz.
So you're judging the debate performance based on the lowest informed voter,
no, it's not the lowest informed voter. One,
that's the argument you're making.
That is not. It's not for two reasons. One, I'm judging the debate performance based on the debate performance and not the bias that you're bringing in from outside. And second, it's not the lowest informed voter because the Harris administration that is hidden, or the Harris campaign that's basically hidden from the American people and for adversarial press, etc. She is trying to run a campaign that says she takes credits for the good things that happened under the Biden administration. And you even have Biden out there saying she was the last person in the room. She had authority. She was great. She helped me with Afghanistan. She helped me with the border, saying all of this stuff. And then simultaneously saying, but I'm the candidate of change. Never once has she said, actually, I disagreed with the policies of Biden. I think this policy was a mistake. I would have done things this way. She's been more than happy for 3.5 years to have the impression that she was one of the last people in the room that was helping coming up with these decisions. She had Biden saying that. She had the media saying that. She was saying that. She's continued to run on that. thoughts. And when asked about like, well, how do we evaluate what you believe now versus the policy positions you had when you were running for office in 2020, she seems to be suggesting, well, I didn't do those things when I was in the Biden administration, thereby connecting to her again. So the idea you're saying that we all just have to say, oh, she has no connection to the Biden administration, she had no say in anything, she's vice president. Clearly, Joe Biden's the one who made these decisions. Oh, and never mind the fact that his brain's applesauce and we know that he wasn't actually doing anything. But we just have to know that Kamala Harris wasn't doing it. No, it's not the lowest common denominator. I would say to you, to articulate to me, so you would say that if hypothetically, do you think the economy is doing well right now?
Yeah, hold on. Let's bring it back. We're talking about Kamala Harris and her role in the government first before we move on to another point.
Well, it's important to that point because what I'm going to ask you, you could say yes or no. Do you think the economy is doing good now?
I'm going to finish the first topic that we're talking about.
Okay,
and then what
I'll do, that's fine. You could ignore the question, right, which is talking about the first topic that we're talking about because
you're trying to redirect the question.
I'm not trying to redirect it. So because you're refusing to answer, I'll answer for you. I bet if I went through your tweets, you'll say, actually, the Biden-Harris administration's done very good with the economy. We have lower inflation than most of the world. Job growth's been great, blah, blah, blah. Now, you'll give her credit for that. You'll say, yes, she was part of that administration.
I give Joe Biden credit for that.
Okay, so Kamala Harris, so just to be clear, and then you could go off on the point you want. You're saying that all of the positive benefits that you think have occurred in the Biden administration, you give zero credit to Harris. Because she was just the henchman. She was just the sidekick. She didn't do anything. That's what you're saying?
She did her job. She's a vice president. Yeah,
okay,
like
so
if the worst would have happened to Joe Biden, like, right?
She can't run on the record. So anyways, you'll say anytime she tries to run on and says, look how good me and Joe Biden did, you say, I don't give her credit for any of that. That's all Joe Biden. That's not her. That's your belief?
It's Joe Biden. It's Joe Biden's administration.
Okay,
it's his cabinet.
I think that's not.
I mean, Joe Biden picked Kamala Harris as VP. No, it is. No, it's 100%.
I think you're absolutely not. So yeah, I just want to be clear. If I would go through your Twitter or through any videos that you've done, you have never said since Harris has been the candidate, you have never said actually Harris is part of this administration. They're doing great in the economy. They're doing great with the border now. They're doing great. You've never made that argument. You're telling us.
Hey, can I let me do my thing here? Can I talk? All right?
Sure.
I'm gonna talk now. Awesome. So before Joe Biden dropped out, I was supporting Joe Biden. So I was actually advocating for the policies that he actually did get passed while he was president, and I actually credited some of his cabinet positions. So understanding that being Kamala Harris, because Kamala Harris did a great job filling in for Joe Biden when he was campaigning and he was still running for president. She went in and spoke with NATO leadership on behalf of Ukraine and our interests.
She's just vice president. She doesn't get credit. Nope, she's just vice president. She don't get credit for any of that. Next.
That's not the argument.
Oh, so she gets credit for the things that you think were good, but when I say, oh well,
I'm judging her actions. I'm judging her direct actions. Like Kamala Harris went to that summit and spoke to NATO leaders,
and then Russia invaded like 3 days later.
And did what?
And then Russia invaded like 3 days later. That one?
No, what are you talking about?
When she went to Ukraine and she was going to sit there and
Like, no, what do you? Okay, yes. Whoa, what is that? What is that? No, you explain this. You explain this.
Shit, explain this. Like, Kamala Harris went over to Ukraine and talked to them, and then like 3 days later, Russia. Like 3 days before Russia invaded. Whoa, yeah, that happened. Sorry, you weren't informed.
No. I am referring to Kamala Harris going to the summit this year, the Global Peace Summit. I'm not sure what you're talking about. You're talking about 3 days before the war?
Yes.
So you're talking about something that I'm not talking about. I'm talking about Kamala Harris's actions filling in for Joe Biden when he was campaigning for the election this year.
What you're talking about is the action she took when she directly talked to other world leaders. And you're talking specifically about when Joe Biden was campaigning. But it would be intuited then that you would say anytime she was taking actions when she was talking directly to world leaders that you would hold her responsible for that, correct? Or is there a reason that you give her credit when she was talking to world leaders, but only when Joe Biden was campaigning? When Joe Biden wasn't campaigning and she was directly talking to world leaders, you don't give her any credit.
Because Joe Biden was talking to the world leaders and Joe Biden's cabinet. And I have disagreements with positions inside of Joe Biden's cabinet and the State Department. I make that well known and I talk about it on my stream. But when Kamala Harris is making these decisions and she's representing the United States, she's done very, very well.
So just to be clear, what your position here is, when she goes over and talks to world leaders in 2022, that's not really her. That's just her as the cabinet of Joe Biden.
Okay,
let me finish.
So we're talking about 2022.
Let me finish. But Once Joe Biden starts campaigning, now it's no longer that she's a member of the cabinet of Joe Biden. Now it's her making the decisions. So we could give her credit, but it only counts when Joe Biden's campaigning. Can you explain to me? So what you're telling me is the policies and the decisions that were made while Joe Biden was campaigning weren't the policies of Joe Biden. Those were the individuals that were operating because Joe Biden was out to lunch because he was running his campaign. Is that what you're telling us?
I'm not even sure where you're at with the argument you're making.
I'm making a simple argument. If you're going to say we give Kamala Harris credit when she talks to world leaders and had a positive outcome, it seems that
where's the negative one? What's the negative one?
Well, like for example, a few days before Russia invaded, she went over and was trying to broker.
So you just say it. You're blaming Russia's invasion of Ukraine on Kamala Harris.
No, I'm saying it was clearly a failure when she was the point person that was designed to sit there and stop sort of an invasion occurring, and it happened.
That's not what her position was. Her position was to try to get us.
What was her position?
Her position was to prepare the United States to aid Ukraine in the upcoming Russian invasion that was planned, and that Russian bases
that's your
in
argument.
Belarus.
So 3 days before she went there, she said Russia's the invasion's imminent. That's what she was saying. Can you show me evidence of that?
Of course.
Cool.
I mean, I can link it to you.
Sure, link.
I'll do it after the stream.
Cool.
Is that the position you're taking, though? Like, what is this?
I'm taking the position of the
Kamala Harris with this?
I'm taking the position of the Harris position, which is when things seemed rosy, she was running on, I was there, I'm making these decisions. I'm taking the Joe Biden position. She's the last person in the room. She was integral to these policies. I'm saying that those policies, when it comes to the economy, to the border, to foreign policies, were way worse than the Trump administration, and she should be held accountable. And J.D. Vance did a tremendous job of accomplishing that in this debate with no pushback of Walz. And you're trying to pretend that you're looking at this debate objectively, and the reason that you're saying that he should not get credit for that is because you just objectively know she was VP and didn't have any connection to all that stuff, except the things that selectively you think were good, and then you say, actually, VP Harris should get credit for that, but she shouldn't be punished for the policies that she was part of this administration because she's just VP and doesn't have connection.
Okay, you're very good at talking in like a twister, and you're very good at, because I was talking about Kamala Harris this year. Yeah, I can. That's clear. So Kamala Harris met with world leaders on 2 instances that you referenced in 2022, and then I referenced this year before the election, like that because of the Global Peace Summit, and those are 2 instances where Kamala Harris. 2 instances where Kamala Harris represented the United States for our interests to help Ukraine. Now, how are you equating that to Kamala Harris apparently like runs the country and it's her administration and all of the responsibilities that have fallen under the Joe Biden administration are somehow just all responsible for Kamala Harris? Like, how is that connected? What is the powers of the vice president? Can you tell me that?
Right. So first off, I could tell you that Joe Biden almost did nothing. His entire administration, his brain's
okay.
That's you asked the question. Would you like me to answer? So the idea, and we're basically being told now that we all but know that even though Joe Biden's not cognitively all there, it's okay because actually the show's ran by people behind the scenes anyways. So to that extent, there's no reason that we shouldn't look at the second in command and say that they're responsible as an integral part of that administration, particularly when they're
bias. That's bias.
You can say that's bias. That's fine. You asked me the question, and I'm going to answer. Right. Particularly then, when we see that Harris herself is trying to connect herself to the Biden administration and has done so for 4 years, saying that, and Joe Biden has done the same, saying that she was integral and she was involved with all these policies, everything from economics to the border to foreign policy, as you're saying now. You're trying to differentiate and saying, no, we should ignore all of that because we've been lied to. And you know this, the American people don't buy the argument.
No, I disagree with that.
Let me finish.
I'm not in your world.
The American people, you could say you're not in my world, but the polling is quite clear on this. The American people, when it comes to the issues that they think are the most important, such as the economy and the border, think that the Trump administration was better than the Harris-Biden administration. And so that's despite the fact that we've been gaslit for how secure the border was for 4 years and how great
you trust polls. You trust polls?
No, I don't think that they're entirely true, but I trust them directionally. And I think that it's the proof's also not just in the poll, but how you see the reaction. The fact that even you are trying to run from Harris being connected to the Biden administration shows that you and the Democrats It shows that you and the Democrats know that if it's a referendum on how is the economy in the border under Trump versus how is the economy in the border under Harris-Biden, that Trump wins that. The Democrats know that. You know that. All of us know that.
Absolutely not, because when given the position or given the opportunity to support a border aid. Donald Trump literally called Republican senators and House to tell them not to vote for the bill as it was passing through. He did that from the outskirts for political gains. He has no interest in the U.S. southern border.
So
Kamala Harris and Joe Biden had a plan. When that does get sent back through the House and the Senate, Kamala Harris already said that she would be willing to sign it. Both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris with the Republican-led House with a bill that was led by a Republican with Senator James Langford, and Donald Trump said, nope, the country can handle it. All that fentanyl that's coming in, all those deaths in Americans and the Haitians and the dogs and the cats in Ohio and all that bullshit can handle it. And because I need to be the supreme commander of the United States of America, I need to be the one that issues these orders. So that just tells me that they don't really care at all. They're just going to use it for political talking points when ready and available. But I told you 2 instances that Kamala Harris.
I'll respond to that.
I'm not. Hold it.
You're welcome to have me as a guest on your show, and you can talk as much as you want. But I will respond to the point you make there. Very effective at regurgitating the NPC talking points that you've been given by the Democrats to repeat over and over. So here's the narrative that you're pushing. In 2020, we were told by Biden and Harris the border is secure. In 2021, we were told by Harris Biden the border is secure. In 2022, we were told by Harris Biden the border is secure. In 2023, we were told by Harris Biden the border is secure. Now it's an election year, and so they have to pretend to care because their internal polling shows, whoops, even people that are traditionally Democrat think there's a huge problem at the border. So now they have to pretend to care. So they're like, well, what about this border bill? The border bill is a disaster. First off, the Republicans that are connected, it's not really about Republican versus Democrat. It's about establishment versus people that are seen as outside the establishment. That's fine. You could say that's cope. The Republicans clearly didn't care about the border before Donald Trump, as is evidenced by the fact that many Republican strategists told Trump in 2016 that such a focus on the border was a losing issue. The truth is they like the fact that they're, please, it's not that Trump won in 2016. You remember, it wasn't a losing issue. And most Americans, even in the debate last night, most Americans think that they would support even things like mass deportations, let alone a stronger border wall or border security. So it is a winning issue to talk about border security. And so what happened is Republicans don't really want to talk about it. They pushed forth a bill that was terrible. This bill would have let in like 5,000 illegals a day. It would have allowed exceptions from the very Biden administration, such as Mayorkas, that had showed a proclivity to allow these people in whatsoever. It funded the very NGOs that are facilitating these people coming in. It would have enshrined this in law, even if Trump won. So he would have had difficulty rescinding this law and having a congressional law passed to have an actual stronger border. It didn't provide any funding for a border wall that would come immediately. All of these things were terrible about this bill. And the idea that Trump should have supported this or Republicans should have supported this that would have allowed the Democrats to have these loopholes and enshrine this in law. So for the next 2 years, they could say, just like the moderators tried to spin, well, it's legal. It's legal that these people are coming in. Republicans voted for it. It's legal. So now you just have to accept these hundreds of thousands that come in a year because you voted for it, which is the exact argument they would have made and said that they couldn't rescind it. I'm supposed to believe that somehow the Democrats that told us for 4 years that the border was secure and did nothing until it was an election year and then wanted a bill that funded the very NGOs that allowed this illegal immigration and facilitate it that would have enshrined this in the law. Oh, but they really care about the border. Bullshit. Why didn't they talk about the border? Why did they say that it was secure in 2021, 2022, 2023? When they had control of the House and the Senate and the presidency, why didn't they solve the border crisis? If it was so important to them, why instead were they rescinding Trump's executive orders, which led to the worst border crisis in modern history, and telling us all the while, actually, the border's secure? Why did they do that if they really care about the border?
Yeah. Because the United States is not a dictatorship, and things need to be done through the Congress.
They controlled Congress and the Senate.
Who controlled the Congress and the
Democrats.
Senate? We control the House.
Didn't you in 2020? Am I wrong about this?
Who was president?
Biden, 2021, right? That election, the 2020 election.
The House went to, and Biden continued the border wall. Biden continued funding the border wall. He continued border wall in Arizona and Texas. Have you been to the border wall?
No, I haven't. Have you?
Okay, yeah, I have.
Wow. So he continued. How many miles of the border wall was built by Biden Harris?
I don't have that number on me right now.
You've been there. Give me a ballpark figure.
I don't have the exact. You're looking it up, so you tell me.
I'm not looking it up. I'm asking you. You're the one who's speaking as an expert. You've been there. You said that Biden built the border wall. I'm asking you, how much?
I'm saying Biden continued Trump's border wall. He continued it in October of 2021 into November, and he actually still continued.
So what occurred was, as you know, as was again referenced in the debate last night, which Vance could have done a slightly better job on this, we were told by Democrats that border walls were ineffective and racist. And so when Trump wanted to spend some money on creating a border wall to have a secure border, they had one of the longest government shutdowns in history to stop him from doing it. Now
Hey,
they
if border
blame
walls
Trump.
worked, if border walls worked, if border walls truly
they
worked,
are-
why was immigration moving up, or why were border crossings going up before Donald Trump even left office? Why, when he showed his famous graph in his speech, and also that MAGA Republicans showed in the Congress showing immigration numbers rising, why was it going up while Donald Trump was president? Like, why didn't the borders? Why did Mexico not pay for the border? Why is the border wall not finished under Trump when he had control of it?
All right, bunch of interesting questions. One, the reason that the border wall wasn't finished under Trump was he tried to have a bill that Democrats had the largest government shutdown because they said that walls were racist, walls that they're now advocating for. So you or Kamala Harris haven't answered for why the wall under Donald Trump was racist, but now that they want a wall that it's not racist. You haven't answered why, if it was ineffective when Donald Trump wanted it, why now Kamala Harris is supporting it. Second, he's not a dictator, so he wasn't able to just say, screw it, I'm going to build a wall on my own, because the Democrats had a shutdown. He was unable to get accomplished everything he wanted. Third, it is true that there was times that because his numbers of illegal immigration and border crossings were so low at one point, it did naturally go up at some points. Ben, there were many reasons why that could have occurred, but it wasn't because walls don't work. It was because there was illegal immigration coming that was facilitated by organizations that our establishment and the Democrats want, like NGOs.
That's nonsense.
You don't think NGOs are facilitating the illegal crime?
No.
That's not true.
No.
The evidence shows that that's quite literally what's going on. Nonetheless, the idea that we have to say because there are ebbs and flows under a 4-year period, and sometimes it went up, like in 2019. By the way, it went down in 2020 then, correct?
No, it was on the rise while Donald Trump was
So
still
the
president.
argument is when he left in 2020, that was the highest point that had been under the Trump
Is
administration.
that what I said? Is that what?
You said it was going up when he went out.
It was already starting to, like, if you read a graph, you know how graphs work?
I do.
Okay, so it was already starting to trend upward while Donald Trump was still president. Like, it was already increasing to the levels where it's getting to. Like, it was already on an upward trajectory while Donald Trump was still in office. And he points to the point on the graph after he was out of office as if it's, or he pointed to a point on the graph while he was still in office and tried to sell it as if this is happening while he was out of office and president, and it's just not the case. But the problem at the border is not going to be fixed with a wall. It's not going to be fixed with security. It's not going to be fixed with the National Guard or whatever, even though the National Guard are down there. And whenever it's raining, by the way, they don't care. Like, there's no crossings when it's raining.
Okay, so just to illustrate the point that you're trying to make. So here's the border crossings under Donald Trump. 2016, 331,000. 2017 drops to 311,000. 2018 drops to 304,000. 2019 goes up to 396,000. 2020, at the end of the year, we had around 350,000, which was precipitously lower than it was in 2019. So the argument is that it went like this, was trending down, then went up in 2019, and as I said, then went back down in 2020. Those numbers were exacerbated hugely under Biden. The argument is that you're trying, and we know that there was, because they couldn't get the policies that he wanted passed through Congress, because Democrats led the largest shutdown, because they wanted these open borders, as they all tantamountly admitted. They did. On that debate stage in 2020, all of them said it shouldn't be a criminal offense for people to come. They all said that they wanted to give benefits to these people. All of them said it's a humanitarian crisis. None of them said of any measures that they would put to stop these people that are coming as long as they claimed asylum. So it was tantamount to open borders. They signaled to the rest of the world that if you come here, we will give you all of these benefits, we'll allow you in, and predictably, that's exactly what happened. On top of that, there were 90-something executive orders that Joe Biden bragged about, which Kamala Harris was there and bragged about as well, almost immediately rescinding, which predictably led to a border crisis, which we could see occurring in real time. They told us over and over there wasn't a border crisis, that the border was secure. They told us that in 2021. They told us that in 2022. They told us that in 2023. And then when they saw that it was an election year issue, they said, oh, now we have to try to keep our phony baloney jobs and pretend that we care about this issue. That's exactly what occurred. It is undeniable.
I think it's a projection. I think it's an absolute projection. Yeah,
what were they doing in 2022 when they had control of the House and the Senate?
What was the Republicans doing when they had bipartisan support and they could have fixed the issue?
They didn't. I already explained to you how the bill was actually bad.
That bill was such an authoritarian bad. You're the projection of the bill that you're talking about with the Kamala Harris supporter that James Langford led is a good bill. The one you're talking about with Donald Trump and the House Republicans, HR2 is dog shit. It's an abs. I am disputing it right now. If you let me speak, I will dispute it.
It was good. That's what you said so far. It was good.
I am actively disputing what you just said right now. Okay.
It was good.
Anyways, HR2 is not a good bill. It was an authoritarian bill that was not going to actually address the systemic problems at the U.S. southern border with asylum claims, because they are backlogging the system. Okay, this would have added judges, this would have added more border agents, this would have added more resources, would have added more security measures at the U.S. southern border to identify any threats that were crossing the southern border into the United States. And Donald Trump and the Republicans said nope. With all these measures and a bipartisan support that Republicans still could have claimed. They could have claimed a victory, a strategic victory under a Democrat president. Everything you're claiming about Democrats back in when Trump was president. You have Biden as the president, and he's a Democrat, and he would have signed a Republican-led legislature for the U.S. southern border, and Donald Trump decided, nope, because I need to win an election, and this is the only issue that I have. But you're not actually going to address any of the concerns. You just want to have fear and carnage, send a HIMARS system down there, send an M1 Abrams systems down there. You know what? I was in a debate with another MAGA, and he said we need to have a battalion of Marines down there. If you decided I'm going to ask a question. How many battalions of Marines would it take to secure the U.S. southern border? What do you think?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Nope.
That's a better answer than the last one I got.
Cool.
I'd take that one.
So now notice what he did here was he completely ignored everything I said. He said
no, I didn't.
Was good. Yeah, this is what he did. So this is
I directly talked about HR2, which was the Republican bill.
So what he did was he talked about HR2 and just said it was authoritarianism. HR2 was a bill that actually had teeth that would have not allowed thousands of people in a day that came here. That's why he doesn't like.
Wrong.
So it would have.
Wrong.
It would have.
Wrong.
It would have. Go ahead.
You think that bill would have stopped people from crossing the border?
I think it didn't enshrine that legally we had to accept in 5,000 something a day before it went into effect. Correct?
That's not. It's still a humanitarian issue. People are crossing for asylum. Like it's still going to be a problem.
And now it comes.
Like sorry, I'm not going to take the sorry, Rob. Sorry, Rob. I'm not going to take the position of. I'm not going to take the position of the military firing away at immigrants crossing the border. I'm just not going to take this.
No one said the military should fire.
Okay, then going back to the debate. Going back to the debate from last night. Going back to the debate from last night.
When JD Vance, if I come as a guest on your show, if I come as a guest on your show, you can filibuster to your heart's content.
I'm going to empower the U.S. southern border. What does that mean?
We'll just okay.
When JD Vance says I'm going to empower the agents of the U.S.
Last chance, I'll leave you. I'll leave you. Sort of allow me to address this, or you can keep trying to talk over me. It's your choice. Right now, notice what he did. Now he gives the game away here. Actually, it's a humanitarian crisis. We do have to leave these people in. You see, and that's exactly what this bill was that they were pushing for.
That's not what I said.
That is what you said. Again, no, it's not. I'm just going to talk. You can continue to say this.
I know you're good at it. You're very good at doing it.
I know you're not very good, ironically, but people could judge for themselves what you said. So,
well, it's your show, of course, because you're just going to talk over me and you're just going to claim it's your show.
I mean, that's what you're doing right now. You're trying to talk over me. So, nonetheless, what else was?
You can do it
when it comes to H2, when we talk about the bill H2 or the HR2 bill, you can see when it actually had more teeth. He's like, but I don't like that. I don't like the teeth. It's a humanitarian crisis. We have to leave certain people in. That's what the bill was doing that was pushed. It had all of these loopholes. Notice he didn't address any of them. He didn't address the fact that it let in 5,000 something people a day. He didn't address the fact that it had loopholes that people like my Orcus that clearly wasn't enforcing the border. As the Border Patrol Union had said, it gave that they blamed specifically Biden, right, and say that he's been an abysmal failure and basically allowed these failures to occur. He doesn't address any of that. He doesn't address the funding to the NGOs. He doesn't address the fact that this would have enshrined it in law, which meant if Republicans took over, they would have difficulty rescinding it. He doesn't address any of that. Instead, he just goes back to talking the same old talking points. He says it would have sent a bunch of money for judges and things like that. Well, the problem's not money. The problem is that these Border Patrol agents, of course, they're going to say, sure, we'll take more money, and maybe they could use more money. Please.
Right.
But it's also the fact that they have an administration currently that's
Is this a debate? Or are you just talking?
I'm going to talk to my heart's content on my show. I gave you a large chunk of time to talk there. I don't know. Is it a debate? You called it and disagreed with me, right? I'm disagreeing with your position right now. So it's taking a format of sort of a debate because you're issuing a position that I'm rebutting, right? That's what I'm doing. So you could say, are we calling this a debate? I would say asking that question seems to suggest that you're trying to derail the point I'm making because already I've said it twice and you've not addressed it. Now, talking specifically then about this bill, he didn't address any of those things that I said that this bill did because all he's capable of doing is repeating the talking points that he's heard. But it was bipartisan, Langford said, right, and it was still a terrible bill. It would have been enshrined in law.
Those are your opinions. Those are your opinions.
You could see from the way that he talks that actually he, just like the Democrats, want to allow these people. We have to be humanitarian. We have to allow them in, right? And so that's sort of the rhetoric that they're going with anyways. Notice that he didn't address once. He hasn't even attempted to address.
Am I like your showpiece? Or like, what are you doing? I'm right here. Like, I'm talking. Like, I can talk and present my own opinions. I'm not a showpiece. Fine.
I'm not like, you get a chance
I'm not
to
like your trophy.
You could. That's fine. Certainly, I don't need you as a trophy. You could have the chance to address.
But that's how you presented me.
You could have the chance, and I'll be sure to interrupt you as
commonly
as you're interrupting me.
I'm ready for
notice how he hasn't addressed whatsoever. Would you prefer if I say this? Notice how you haven't addressed whatsoever the fact that the Biden administration told us the border was secure in 2021, 2022, 2023, that they controlled the House and the Senate through 2021 and 2022, and they didn't do anything to secure the border. In fact, they seemed pretty pleased in telling us that everything was going swimmingly, that these people were coming in and flooding in. Notice he hasn't addressed that. What he wants you to believe is that they were diligently working on securing the border and thought it was a problem when we saw these record numbers coming in 2021, 2022, 2023. They were diligently working on it, even though they were telling us and virtue signaling to all of us, actually the border's secure, actually things are going quite well. And then it just so happened in 2024, they finally came to the, oh, you know what, here's this bill that we support. He hasn't answered the fact that we saw that the numbers...
Because I fundamentally disagree with you. I fundamentally disagree with you. I fundamentally disagree with you on this. Like, you have your position and I have a different position, and you're trying to sell your MAGA audience your take, but I'm here trying to...
Okay, we'll just mute you here for a second, so then we'll give you a chance to speak when I'm done. Notice how he hasn't addressed that. Now, what you can't lie about is the data. You can't. We see that one of the first things that Biden did when he came in office was bragged about the 90-something executive orders of Trump's that he rescinded, and we see that that immediately led to a gratuitous spike in the amount of illegals that were coming. It's because they wanted them to come. They bragged about it. They thought it was a PR victory to say, oh, we're treating them more humanely. We got rid of these. And predictably, the data doesn't lie. He has no answers for any of that. He's going to the old Democratic talking point, oh, trust us, we always cared about the border, but mean old Trump didn't like this border bill, so all of the blame falls on him. Okay, you can respond now.
So your authoritarian banhammer for muting me there.
Are you banned?
So number one, we talk about whatever, muted. So you talk about Democrat.
Is this a debate? Is this a debate?
This is fun. So
is it a debate? Is it a debate?
Yeah, it's a debate. So anyways, so U.S.
Am I your trophy? Am I your trophy? Is that what this is? I'm your trophy?
I wasn't going to actually address
Am I your trophy? Am I your trophy? Is that what it is? Am I your trophy? Am I your trophy? And like that's all this is. Is this a debate? Is this a debate? Go ahead. I'll leave you talk now. It's annoying.
It was a very, very good bill, and it was worked on by both sides, which is very important to do in a bipartisan Congress. And you try to pass bills for the American people that is bipartisan. And when given the opportunity to pass something that both parties supported and people from both sides supported, the Republican Party and Donald Trump said, nope, that's good. We don't need any of that. It is a humanitarian issue, regardless of whatever the cope you're talking about. I know you really just want to like load up a 249 and just a belt fed and just fire away at the immigrants down there, but that's just not going to solve the issue, and it's just not going to solve the border crisis. The number one source of immigrants coming into the United States is going to be from when they fly in and stay beyond their allowed visa. That is actually the number one immigration stay inside of the United States. It's not even the U.S. southern border crossings. I fundamentally disagree that the U.S. southern border crossings are a very key, strong issue with the United States. I feel like that is a very focused MAGA Republican talking point. And even when addressing the issues of the asylum and the backlogged asylum that does need to be fixed, I agree with you. I agree that there is issues that need to be handled down there. But I guess when it comes to actually taking care of the problem and legislating and bringing it to the Congress to do so, you would rather fall onto talking points and narratives and then push it back into propaganda and not even handle the problem when given, or not even handle the issue when presented. And I think Tim Walz did a good job of that in the debate yesterday, talking about demonizing the problem instead of solving it. And that is a very common MAGA Republican tactic when dealing with any type of issue or anything in the news space these days. You're just going to demonize it, complain about it, and then not actually want to figure it out or solve it. You're just going to make it up, just like JD Vance says, just going to make up some stories, and hopefully that's what people will go with. So, I mean, you've done a lot of rambling and a lot of Republican talking points, and I was just going to share that my background isn't Democrat. Like, I am not a Democrat. I come from MAGA. I voted for Trump in 2016. I volunteered for John McCain's campaign in 2008. I mail-in voted for Mitt Romney when I was deployed overseas in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. So I've been very much a Republican like my whole life up until 2020 when I decided to vote Green Party, because I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go for both of these parties. Like, I'm going to vote for someone else now. So I went Green Party. But then now, because of how cooked the right wing is and how cooked MAGA is and how cooked libertarians are, simping for Vladimir Putin and wanting to be Putin fluffers, there's just no chance for me to go for any other political party other than the Democratic Party, who at least want to keep the fundamental or the foundations of the United States together by upholding the Constitution, which MAGA and the Republicans have absolutely zero interest in doing.
So you notice that there's a lot of sophistry here. When we're talking about the specifics of the bill that he wanted to talk about, notice how he hasn't addressed any of the specifics again. He just says these buzzwords. It was bipartisan. Oh, by the way, I'm not
bipartisan
a Democrat.
is a buzzword? Hold on. Bipartisan is a buzzword?
I'll finish my point. It was bipartisan. So don't all the specific objections you made to it. No, it was bipartisan. It's all good. When it comes to, I'm not really a Democrat. I just have no choice because of MAGA. None of this addresses the point that he wanted to make specifically about the border. Notice he, again, completely failed to address for about the fourth time the fact that the Biden-Harris administration rescinded all of these executive orders.
I did address it. You're lying.
You're lying. You
did
not address it.
You were lying. You were lying to your audience right now. I did address it.
How'd you address it? Go ahead. You have 10 seconds to tell me how you addressed it.
Okay, I fundamentally disagree with your entire positioning on the border. I do not view it as an issue within the United States as an invasion. I do not view it as an issue in the way that you view it.
That's not addressing. So he
that is directly addressing it.
That is not addressing. That's not addressing him saying I don't think it's a big problem.
That is directly addressing.
That is not addressing it. Him saying I don't think it's a problem isn't the same as me saying the Biden team told us that there wasn't a crisis at the border. They said it was good. Now they're saying it is a crisis at the border. So why didn't they talk about it in 2021, 2022, 2023 when we saw these record numbers? What were the policies that they were advocating to solve it when they had both the House and the Senate? What did they do? They did nothing. They waited until it was an election.
They never had the House and the Senate. Please. You're making that up. Again,
that's your claim?
So the Democrats had the House and the Senate? We've had all three? All three?
1 second. Yeah, you could be right. Let me check.
I know I'm right. It's been a Republican House the entire time. I know I'm right. They're the ones fighting back at it this entire time. Under Trump, they had a Democrat Senate, and they had a Democrat House and a Republican Senate. Now it's inverted.
Let's see. Shit. 1 second. Let's find the exact numbers.
Mm-hmm. So, anyways,
no, it's fine. We're gonna. Let's find it. Let's see. 20 would be the 117th Congress. Correct? I believe. So we'll get the exact numbers. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay. Okay.
The Democratic Party had 220 members in the House. The Republicans had 212. And I believe in the Senate, the Democrats, it was tied, if I'm not mistaken, and Kamala Harris was the tie-breaking vote as the VP. Correct?
Are you referring to...
The independents, it was 50-50 with the independents voting Democratic, so it was 50-50, and Kamala Harris became the tie-breaking vote. So you're incorrect. The Democrats, with the tie-breaking vote in the 50-50, controlled the Senate, and they had more members of the House from 2020 to 2022, and they had the presidency. Will you admit you were incorrect?
From 2020 to 20, so 2 full years?
Yes, correct. They had the House, the Senate.
Even while Trump was president?
No, the election that occurred in 2020 that would have resulted.
So that would be 2021. So they took over in 2021.
The election occurred in 2020 for 2 years. The first 2 years of the Biden presidency. Look, you made the declarative claim. You said that I was wrong. I was willing to look it up and say that I could be wrong.
They did not start governing until 2021. Please.
Okay, they governed for 2 full years. They governed for 2 full years. The first 2 full years of the Biden-Harris administration, they had a tie in the Senate with Harris had the tiebreaker, and they controlled the House. Correct or not?
Wrong. No.
Okay,
no.
What was wrong about that?
The Trump was in office in 2020. All of 2020.
Let's say
the whole year, the entire year.
From 2021 to 2023.
And you said 4 years too.
No, I didn't. I said for 2 years they had the House, the Senate.
I heard 4.
Well, you were mistaken. You weren't listening because you were too busy talking over me. So again, I've directed this 3 times to you and said they controlled the House. They controlled all 3 branches of. Or I'm sorry, they controlled the executive and the legislature. Why didn't they do anything on the border? Your answer is.
They didn't do anything at the border. Like,
right? Why didn't they pass the legislation?
So HR2, why didn't they pass HR2? Is what you're asking?
I didn't say specifically HR2. Instead, they told us there wasn't a border crisis. Right? That's what they told us. They said it wasn't a border crisis. Instead, what you saw was Joe Biden rescinding executive orders.
Wrong. No.
What did they do? Tell us what they did.
Absolutely. The right wing was framing the border as some type of an invasion through right wing media.
Okay,
And
you
so it
disagree
caused
with the frame.
Democrats-
You disagree with the framing. So what did they
That's-
do?
They drafted a bill led through James Langford to address the concerns and issues directly by right
That's
wingers, like in
2024.
Republicans.
That's in 2024. What did they do in 2021, 2022?
Last time I checked, they're presidents for 4 years, and they
That's
have
correct.
an office for 4 straight years.
That's correct.
So whatever they do within the time frame is what they can accomplish. So you're going to say because
what
it
did they
wasn't
do?
done in the first.
Right, when they had control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, so that was their chance to pass forth bills that Biden would have been able to sign. What did they do?
So they have 4 years to govern. They were trying
What
to
did
get
they
the
do
bill
for those
through.
first 2 years? They were trying to get that bill, the Langford bill, through in 2021?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
So what
No,
did they do
you're
for
just
those?
spinning
What did they,
games.
if they thought that there was a problem at the border, what did they do?
Who thought it was a problem at the border? Your
Well,
right
that's what the
thought it was
Biden
a problem at the
Oh,
border.
so you're admitting that the Harris Biden administration didn't think there was a problem at the border.
Not in the same sense as
That's-
MAGA Republicans.
And that's
do.
exactly so.
That's
exactly
why
the point.
I think.
So that's exactly
what I
the point
told you.
was
That's what I
making.
told
So
you. And that's what I told your audience. I
that's
fundamentally
exactly-
disagree with this entire principle.
So that's
I
exactly.
fundamentally
So I'll
disagree.
go back. So now after all that and the deflection, saying actually they didn't control the House, that was incorrect. But I was willing to look. All of us make mistakes, so I'm not holding you too much. But I was pretty sure that I was correct about that. So you can see this chart here when he talks about how things were going up. Things were going up to Trump. You see October 2020, December 2020. Now you see February 2021. When Biden comes in, you see that it starts to go up. It's unsurprising when they talk to a lot of these people that are illegally crossing. They said Biden will allow us here. The Democrats want us here. Then you see the crisis numbers that we saw all through the Biden-Harris administration. It's no surprise because they didn't treat it like a crisis, as this caller is saying. They rescinded executive orders. They wanted these people to come in. They didn't think it was a crisis. They only are now talking about it in 2024 because they realize it's an election issue because people were concerned about it. So he doesn't have any answer. He didn't answer. He only says, well, the reason that Biden-Harris didn't do anything when they had the House and the Senate and they had the executive branch was they didn't buy the framing that it was a crisis, right? Which is another way of saying they did nothing. And then he just flounders and says, but
because we're not living in your MAGA world, and also
not like now again. I gave you plenty of time to talk after I was done messing with you for the interruptions you gave. You'll have a chance to speak again after this, right? So again, he again concedes that they didn't do anything. They didn't think it was a crisis, and you could see it just oozes from him. Oh, it needs to be humanitarian, and I don't buy your framing, and it wasn't this big deal, and blah 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 blah.
Oozing.
Again, if I have to mute you so I could get through my point because you can't continue yourself, I could do that, no problem. Anyways, you could see that it oozes from him that actually he was okay with these people coming in. That's the truth. And so was Biden, and so was Harris. They're only now pretending to care because they know that it's bad for them in the election. He also just says it was bipartisan, doesn't address any of the specific things I said that were problematic with this bill at all. Doesn't even remotely try to. It isn't opinions. I'm telling you things that were in the bill, and he's not. Again, last chance. If you interrupt me again, I'll just mute you.
Just do it. Just mute me. Okay. Mute me right now. Yeah. Mute me right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're muted.
All right.
Yeah. And maybe I'll bring him back. Maybe I won't. If you're asking to be muted, I'm more than happy to gratify your request there. He doesn't have any response, so he just keeps going with these buzzwords. It's bipartisan, and Trump doesn't care. Again, what I'm telling you is you could see that he doesn't care about the border. Biden-Harris didn't care about the border. They don't care. They wanted a bill that would encourage allowing these illegals to keep coming, 5,000 something a day. That's written in the bill. They wanted one that had loopholes that Mayorkas would be able to say he could give special exemptions. That's written in the bill. It can only be enforced, I think, up to like 180 days or something like that. I don't remember the exact specifics. That's in the bill. It funded these NGOs. That's in the bill. It enshrined it into law for multiple years. That's in the bill. He doesn't address any of it. He just says, but it was bipartisan, so it's all good. And the American people understand that when it comes to the border, that Trump was markedly better. And all they have is, but we tried to put this bill out at the last minute, but they can't explain the fact why they didn't think it was a crisis for 3 years. Why they gaslit the American people that everything was good. And it was only till it was an election year when they spoke up. This goes more back to, we got a little sidetracked from what the conversation was supposed to be, that he believes that Walz won the debate against J.D. Vance. And when I outlined the reason that I think Vance clearly won, he immediately resorts to, well, for things that Walz didn't even say in the debate, I think Walz won. So when I say, look, J.D. Vance did a great job of connecting Harris to the failed policies of the Biden administration, and Walz never even pushed back once, he's like, but everybody knows that's not true. It doesn't matter. That's stupid. Of course she's just VP. And you can see how he's floundering. He's using, his bias of things that weren't even said in the debate to inject his own argumentation to try to save Tim Walz. It is evident to anyone that watched that both perceptually as this caller admits that perceptually J.D. Vance looked good. He makes excuses immediately. He says, well, he's an experienced debater. Right, so that's why he looks better. That's why he was better on the substance, and that's why he was better at achieving the goals that he outlined. Only someone that's biased to the point where they are predisposed to hating MAGA and wanting to vote for Harris and Walz thought that Walz won that debate. He hasn't given any reason why he thought Walz won that debate. He's given deflections. He's giving talking points. And he's clearly ill-equipped to argue the specifics of these issues. Instead, he's just going, but it was bipartisan. And actually, Democrats didn't have the House and the Senate. And actually, okay, they did, but that was only 2 years. And what did you expect them to do? They're there for 4 years, et cetera, et cetera. So he's out of his depth on this. And I appreciate the fact that he wants to get a little clout and come on here and think that he could talk to someone who's acknowledged several times that I'm a good debater and I'm a good talker. And I appreciate that. We'll give him a chance to respond here. But it's clear that he's out of his depth, much like Tim Walz. It's a very much Vance Walz-esque conversation that we're having here, which is ironic. He doesn't have much on details, has a lot on empty platitudes and ignoring things, and trying to sort of say it, speak out of both sides of his mouth. Actually, they're trying to secure the border and they're doing a good job. But it wasn't a crisis, and these numbers were good. There was no problem that these people were coming in, and I refuse to accept your MAGA framework. Last thing I'll say is he makes some comment about how I want Marines shooting at people. Never said that. Desperation. Next thing he'll say that I wrote Project 2025, just like the Harris-Walz administration or campaign. So he's learned from people that know how to have false smears and things like that. There you go. You're unmuted. If you could contain yourself.
If I can contain myself. So that's what you do. You mute your debate opponent and then just talk over them and present their opinions as fake opinions. Like everything you just said is an absolute lie. And even to the point where you said Marines on the border and I want you to shoot them. I was asking about your authoritarian position on the border and whether empowering, from when J.D. Vance in the debate last night wants to empower the southern border and empower agents. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean that they get to shoot immigrants crossing the border? That's what I asked you specifically. And then in a joke, because I debate other MAGAs, and I don't know what you think I'm coming to your platform for some clout. That's kind of a silly comment to make. But I've debated other MAGAs, and they have the same position, or they had the position that all it would take is just a battalion of Marines at the U.S. southern border, and that would absolutely solve the security problem. So that's why I asked you that. But again, you wanted to mute me to misrepresent my position, which you've done numerous times tonight, and that's why I've started to talk over you and turn into some bad faith argument, because you're absolutely arguing in complete bad faith. I mean, everything you've said is just based on feelings. Everything you said is based on emotions about the bills. You're not even going to get into it. And when I do respond to every single point that you make, you want to mute me and say, no, this is what he's really saying. And this is, he's doing talking points, and bipartisan is a fuck, whatever you said, is a code word or a keyword or whatever insane talking points that you do have over there. So anyways, back to the debate and back to who we think won the debate, because I was trying to give my opinion as to why I think Tim Walz won that debate and J.D. Vance actually lost. J.D. Vance did good at Republican talking points. He's a very good debater, which you were trying to re-explain to your audience and repackage my own argument to them, which is very, very weird to do, especially when I'm literally sitting here in a Discord call with you and you're trying to repackage my positions to your audience, which is very weird. But I was trying to explain that J.D. Vance is kind of similar to like a used car salesman. Like, he's very good at selling you something without saying a whole lot of substance to it. And that's what his common debate tactic was. And he has much more experience in doing that over Tim Walz, because like I said, that was Tim Walz's very first national debate. But the most thing that Tim Walz said, when J.D. Vance was talking about the U.S. southern border, his position was to just empower the law enforcement to do its job, manifest the power. He's saying hospitals are full, houses are full. He's worried for American citizens. He's saying the border is open. And then he also lied about the CBP One app magically waving the wand to become a U.S. citizen, which is an absolute lie. That's not what that intends to do. So anyways, all in all, during the first 2 years of the Biden administration, they were trying to get legislation through for the U.S. southern border and faced backlash from Joe Manchin and Sinema in the Congress, similar to this year with MAGA Republicans trying to fight back, because Joe Manchin and Sinema absolutely are working against the Democratic Party. So when they were trying to get legislation through, especially this year for that U.S. southern border, you can bring up all you want and bring up numbers and all the past, and it doesn't matter. Where the issues, time moves forward. Time moves in one direction and one direction only. We don't loop backwards. We don't spin backwards. We don't circle back to the past. We live in the present. And when given the opportunity to pass a bill that would have substantially assisted the U.S. southern border with security, with money, with funding, with resources for border agents and resources for asylum judges, which is absolutely needed because the asylum list is backlogged and they need to see a judge in order to be determined if they can stay in the country or not. I know this is a lot of information. So they need to see a judge before being decided if they can stay in the country or not. These would have added the resources to be able to handle that, because if you are concerned of criminals in the U.S. Coming across the border, you got to find out, right? We got to find out if they are a criminal, if they do have a past, and in order to do that, they need to see these asylum judges, and that money would have absolutely helped that take place. But again, Donald Trump and the Republicans decided not to give Donald Trump an advantage in the 2024 election.
Okay, so again, you can see it's ironic that he talks about that J.D. Vance was this used car salesman that said a bunch of things with no substance. That's literally what he just did. He doesn't address any of the specific things I said. Again, he claims that I'm misrepresenting the arguments that he made. I'm not. He's speaking in empty platitudes. Everything you said about me is a lie and it's a misrepresentation, and no, it's all untrue. Now he does try to make two arguments that I'll talk about specifically surrounding this. The first argument is he says that it's important because it gives funding. Well, the other bills that were suggested, for example, Trump trying to give funding to them, trying to build the wall, etc., in 2019 that the Democrats shut down, also tried to give funding. The Republican bill also tries to give funding. The problem is it's not just a matter of funding. It's the fact that these Border Patrol agents, as they've said, yes, they do need more money, but they're being intentionally hamstrung by the Biden administration. He hasn't addressed the fact that this bill specifically allowed loopholes where Mayorkas himself and other people in the administrative state would be able to waive and have exemptions for people. We could see that they would have been likely to do that because they like these people coming in. As the person that's calling in, I forget your name, I'm so sorry, Alex, I think. As Alex, it's clear that he didn't think it was a crisis and was fine with the record numbers of people we had coming in. That's the exact feeling that the Democrats and Joe Biden had. They only started to pretend to care about it when it came to 2024. He says that this money would be good. Yeah, I'm sure money would be good, but we can see even without the money that he's suggesting that this bill is necessary, the executive orders that Trump had these numbers far lower than the numbers that we had of Joe Biden. And the Republicans passed a bill that had more teeth, and you could see what the response is. Democrats don't actually want a bill with teeth because they want the bill that has the loopholes and all of that stuff that would have made the bill worthless in the first place. That's why they wanted a bill like this in the first place, because it had these loopholes. It would have been enshrined in law. It did fund the NGOs. It did make sure that like 5,000 or something would be able to come in a day. It did. You said wrong. It doesn't fund the NGOs?
Your framing you have of this.
Okay, so then you interrupted erroneously because you're just saying what I'm saying is factual. You're just saying that you disagree with the framing of it. Now, again, it's ironic because he's the person who seems to be hyper-focused on this bill, but it's quite evident that I know more about what's in that bill than him, who's using this as the whole reason for an excuse as to why the Democrats did nothing when they controlled the show for 2 years.
You are lying about the bill, You're lying.
What part did I lie about?
You were lying about the funds. You were coping about the funds.
So you're
the
telling
funds
me
aren't going to do anything. Actually, you're saying the
you
funds.
Said what part did I lie about? What part did I lie about the bill? You said I said where did I say the funds are not going to do anything? Show me, quote me where I said that. Where did I say the phrase the funds will not do anything?
It had to have been at least 10 seconds ago, maybe 15
Okay,
seconds
and I
ago.
said the direct words, the funds aren't going to do anything. That's what I said. And you're like, that's not true, that's a lie. The funds will do something. That's the argument that you're making? No, you said lie specifically when I said it funds NGOs. You said that's a lie. Does it fund NGOs? We'll go step by step. Here's the things I said. Does it fund NGOs?
Does the bill fund NGOs?
Yes.
What NGOs do they fund, and what is the purpose of the
question
funding?
I was asking was, does the bill fund NGOs?
Sure, but what is the purpose of the NGOs?
The bill funds
what is the
NGOs, so I was
purpose?
correct
What
about
are the NGOs doing, and what are they doing? Because the framing
largely
is
a
the
lot of
purpose
these groups.
this.
Now, why they do it's irrelevant because we're going to get to specific things, but it is true that the NGOs are intentionally helping people come to the border and giving them instructions on how to claim asylum and get through here, right? That's one of the reasons that this would be bad, because it literally funds the organizations that are helping so many of these people come to the border.
Helping the legal. So the NGOs that are helping them with the legal process.
So the next thing I said was that it allows like 5,000 something a day or something like that. Yes or no? Is that true?
So you don't want them facilitating the legal process?
I asked you a specific question. Yes or no? You said what I said was a lie. You said that the claims I said about this bill was a lie.
Yes.
So when I said, okay, so it does allow 5,000 something. You acknowledge that. A day.
Yeah, yep. Until Biden can shut down the border. Until Biden can shut that border down completely.
Does it provide for people in the administrative state like Mayorkas to give special exemptions?
Administrative state? The administrative state?
Yes.
So you believe in so Project 2025 specifically talks about the administrative state.
Wow, that's
very
cool.
interesting, Rob.
I've also
very
heard Bill
interesting.
Clinton use the term administrative
Very
state,
interesting.
so I must be a Democrat
very
as well.
interesting. So is this a deep state?
What does this have anything? What does this have to do?
What does
with
administrative state mean, Rob? What does administrative state mean?
Administrative state means the people in the executive branch that are tasked with being people that are in the cabinet that are able to make these decisions.
No, that's not what that means.
Okay, then
no.
you define what I meant by administrative state.
You know exactly what you meant by
Right,
when you
I
talked
do know
about
what I meant about
administrative state.
administrative state. What I'm talking about is there are people in these agencies, such as Mayorkas, that are happy with the amount of people that we're coming across, and this gives them the ability to have exemption power. So because we already saw their record of 2021, 2022, of 2023, of believing like you do, that this wasn't a problem, that the framing of MAGA was wrong, that they would continue to employ that when they had ultimate authority to do to, because it was enshrined in this law to give them exceptions. Yes, they did. My question to you is, you made the declarative, you interrupted me to say that I was lying about the things that I said this bill did. So far, you have conceded that I was correct about funding the NGOs.
No, I know I didn't.
Conceded, so it doesn't fund NGOs. You can't even be honest about what you just said. You just admitted, yes, it does fund the NGOs. Then when I say you admitted that, you say, no, I didn't admit that. So I'll ask you again for clarification. It's clear that you accuse me of not arguing in good faith. You're duplicitous and even benign answers. I will ask again for clarification. I will ask again for clarification. Did this bill fund NGOs? A yes or no will suffice.
Yes, to help immigrants cross the legal manner.
So then when I said it funds NGOs, and you said I was a liar, and then you said yes, and then I said okay,
you were a liar on
and
the
then
funding.
you said
You're a
yes,
liar on the
and
funding.
then when I said, oh, but you said yes, and you said I didn't say that, and then I asked you again, you said yes, so you've now waffled on this 3 times. So one, I said that it funded NGOs, you've conceded that's true. Second, does it allow exemptions for it doesn't trigger until 5,000 or so come a day?
So in the NGOs, that's a legal process for crossing. You support legal crossing directly?
Second question.
Do you support legal crossing of the border?
No, I do not support that. The NGOs.
So you don't support legal immigration
What
either.
you're doing is trying. You accuse me of being a liar, and
You
all the
support legal immigration?
You accuse me of being a liar, and all the substantive points that I said were true. You can't argue that, and so now you're trying to deflect.
Substantive point?
And you're saying, okay, it does fund NGOs, but that's a good thing. The substantive points there are the following things I said. One, it funds NGOs. After some waffling, you had to concede that yes, it does fund
I'm not
NGOs,
waffling.
and
There's
now
no
you
waffling.
are waffling. You said yes, it does. Then you said no, I never said yes. Then you said yes, it does. That is the definition of waffling. You are directly changing your answer. The second thing I said was that it allows an exemption. It doesn't really trigger until there's 5,000 or something a day, some number. You acknowledged, yes, that's true. That part of it was true. The third part I said was it allows people like Mayorkas and the administrative state, people like under Mayorkas in that office, to give exemptions. Your answer to that is that true or not?
You're spinning so much, dude, because
I'm not spinning.
number one,
these are the same arguments I've made about this bill since the first time you brought it up that you have not addressed. You have accused me of lying, so I'm just asking you whether or not I made basically 4 points. So the first 2 points you have been forced to concede were true. So now we're on to point 3. Did it give powers for Mayorkas and people?
Rob, the more you talk, that doesn't mean you win. You know this, right?
I understand that. That's why I'm asking you
simple.
That's why you interrupted me is the point I was making, and you said that I was lying. Now the burden is on you to show I was lying. I made 4 claims. So far, we've gone through 2 claims, and it turns out I wasn't lying. Now we're on claim 3. I'm asking you, did this bill give exemption power to Mayorkas where he could have exemptions for certain people that cross the border? Yes or no?
I was referring to the lying about the framing of what I said because we're having a meta conversation about the conversation because you're layering this thing instead of just addressing what it's saying at the surface. You're going to have mini conversations about the conversation. I'm not interested in that. I will literally flare out with this.
You can flare out. So now you can say, so he interrupted me. Now you could go back to being quiet. So when I said that this bill did these sort of things and he said, you're a liar, then we had to painstakingly go through and say, okay, what am I lying about? Then he defaults back to, okay, the things I said are technically true. It's just that my framing of it is a lie. That's the problem. My framing of it's
yes.
So the things
there
that
you
I
go.
said,
The
things that I said about last chance, you already interrupted me to call me a liar, and then we're made a fool of.
I'm agreeing with what you're saying right now.
If you can't contain yourself, then I'll be forced to mute you again. Now, one of the things that I think was funny was when I mentioned this before, You asked me to mute you and then complained when I complied with your request, which is also funny. So I'll go back to the point I was trying to make. It's hard to keep a train of thought when you have someone interrupting, calling you a liar, and then when you go painstakingly through the claims you made, they're forced to admit, okay, you're telling the truth about all that. I just disagree with your framing of it. So you can see sort of when it comes to the substance of talking about the specific bill, he hasn't really said anything. He just says, oh, it gives money. I've already addressed that. Then he makes this second argument that's now going to be an excuse for why the Democrats didn't do anything in 2021, 2022. He says, well, it's because Manchin and Sinema. Nonetheless, Biden was the person in charge. He was running the party. Why couldn't he get them on board with anything? Is the argument really going to be? Last chance. It's not a matter of being a dictator. It's not like he has to break their arm. The executive is supposed to actually have the people underneath him be the party leader and get something accomplished. It's on him whether or not he could get something accomplished to deal with the border. The truth is, because like Alex here, who's called in, he didn't think it was a crisis. Alex has already given you the answer. Alex shows himself that he's like, actually, I didn't have a problem with those numbers. I think that it was being misframed. I think it was bad the way MAGA was framing it. Yes, that's exactly my argument. That's how Biden fell. That's why you can't point to the substantive bills that Biden was suggesting be pushed through. I'll allow him to try to do that when he gets a chance to speak. He could say, oh, this is the bill that Biden tried to put that would have had more security. And then Manchin and Sinema said, nope, sorry, Joe Biden, we won't go along with that. I'll allow him to give the example of that bill. I certainly will. Then when it comes to the debate proper, like he says that Vance didn't have any substance and he just starts to prattle on with these empty platitudes about MAGA and things like that. Vance had far more substance than you saw from Walz. It's objective to anyone that was watching. He then proceeds to just make these excuses like, well, of course, Vance, he's a debater. He's a debater. That's it. He went to Yale. Right. These are giving excuses for why he performed better than Walz. So I am going to get out of here by 11:30, so I'll give you a chance to respond to all of this. But I have to say, like, with one of the things I always think is funny when dealing with someone like you is it's not just that you're like not doing so hot, particularly on the substance of the things we're talking about, but it's your arrogance while you're doing so poorly that I find incredibly amusing. And so I'll give you a chance to respond to all this, but know that I'm very much enjoying this interaction. And I'm glad that you think you're doing well and you're using these buzzwords that you're doing, but you're doing very poorly. You don't even understand the fundamentals of the bill that you're talking about. And you're actually waffling on whether or not you say things like, I never said that it funds NGOs, and then I'm forced to go through it. And then you complain that I'm getting so meta talking about these specifics. When you call someone a liar and they ask you, well, what part did I lie about? And you are forced to say, well, it's just a framework, and you have to waffle continuously. You can see how the debate gets drugged down in the mud with things like this. But go ahead, you have a chance to respond, and then this will be your last chance to respond. So we'll give you up to 5 minutes here, and then I do have to get going at some point tonight. So go ahead. Here it comes with the substance. Here we go.
Yes. I really do appreciate when you give my arguments to your audience in the play-by-play, like as if they're not listening. That's my personal favorite. Like as if we're not talking to each other in like a one-on-one conversation, and we don't have hundreds and hundreds of people watching us right now. So the play-by-play back is really interesting. I'm sure your audience appreciates that and having it MAGA-splained to them, because they just can't hear me on what I'm saying. That's very adorable. I do like that debate tactic. I will remember that one in the future. I do think it is very important when debating to have a back and forth in good faith. I mean, we didn't really have good faith from the beginning. You were muting me. I could have did better, not like talking over you, but I mean, you were just kind of talking and being loud with your talking. And when I would explain the fundamental disagreement I have, because I mean, our disagreements are fundamental. Like I am not a Trump supporter. I am not you. I don't live in right-wing world like you do. I used to. Trust me, I grew up Fox News watcher. I grew up, I told you, you're going to call it cope or whatever, but I grew up in the same position you were in, and I came away from it. So I fully understand the beliefs and positions that you have and how you get them. But when I'm debating you and I'm talking to you directly, and the way you repackage what I'm saying to you, and I'm arguing every single point you're making is, I don't know if that's a lasting tactic or how people are going to engage with you on the left. And I'm not even as far left as many would be, but I'm just recently getting into the space myself. But I was arguing every point, specifically with the U.S. southern border, and I know that MAGA will focus on this, and Trump supporters like focusing on the southern border because it is the only issue that you have to run on in the 2024 election. But that is also by design, because Donald Trump ensured that would happen by killing the border bill that would have at least addressed the concerns, because you would have needed bills. You would have needed more bills. This wasn't going to be the fix-all. This wasn't going to be the bill to end all bills, and the U.S. southern border would be cured now, and everything is great. No, this would have been a bill, there would have been more bills, more legislation done, more work done in the government, which is what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to go to work for us, and they're supposed to pass bills for the American people that are going to directly address our concerns. So to say that that it should come from the executive, as if it's like America's a dictatorship and not working with our Congress, is very, very frightening to me. And yes, our debate that we started with J.D. Vance and Tim Walz, I already said J.D. Vance did be optically confident. I agree with that. Like he came across, he was able to be quick and snappy, which is very important in a debate. I've noticed debates, when it comes to presidential debates, vice presidential debates, you have to be more entertaining than the other person. People are waiting for a quickness. They don't want long-winded arguments. They don't want to hear actual policies and legislation. They want someone who's going to get clickbait. And that's why you specifically think Tim Walz lost, because he wasn't attacking J.D. Vance. He was more so addressing the questions and the substance of the questions, which I feel, at least how I vote, is very important to do. Like I clickbait and click farming is fun, and it's cool to do for TikToks and Reels and the internet, but I'm trying to listen to some substance. So when it came back and forth, just in conclusion, I know you said you got to go, so I don't want to take your time too much. And again, thank you for having me on your show regardless, even though we do have fundamental disagreements on this and it got a little heated. I do appreciate you and your audience's time for having me over here. I just feel that on the substance of the debate, Tim Walz won when answering the questions. J.D. Vance didn't give a single specific answer to any question. Tim Walz was very specific with his answers, and even to the point of the foundation of like why I've switched completely from, I mean, I'm speaking to you personally as a voter now and not someone with the platform, but me personally, why I've switched from the Republican Party to voting Democrat this year is Donald Trump and January 6th. And I know that you were talking to your other guests that you have no interest in January 6th, but I'm telling you, the majority of the country still does. And that was a very, very dark day in American history where Donald Trump tried to overturn the results of the election and send a mob at the Capitol to try to physically stop the electoral process. And I just view that as the antithesis to the United States. So I will be voting happily against Donald Trump, and maybe the Republican Party can get their act together again someday, but that is not going to be this year.
Okay, thanks so much for calling in. I'll address your comments here. You can stay in the chat if you want, but yeah, I mean, again, I hate to use this again, but remember the quote in Billy Madison where he's like, "You've said nothing in your rambling. We're all dumber for having listened to it." No addressing of substance whatsoever. The irony, of course, being that you talked about wanting substance through interactions and debates. Just empty platitudes. I used to be Republican. You're MAGA. Blah, blah, blah. And like, it's just nothing. You didn't address any of the specific things I said about the bill. You didn't address any of the things I said about the fact that Joe Biden, you continue to not do so. You just sort of went on about these platitudes over and over. Well, it was bipartisan, and you know, you're lying, and you're the way you frame to your audience, and like, it's just nothing. There's nothing there. It's just hot air. I do appreciate you calling in. I do. I don't have any hard feelings. I enjoy interactions, even like this, that I think there wasn't much substance to. But I find it amusing, and I enjoy debating people. This is the primary thing that I like doing, and the reason I stream is for entertainment. So I wish you no hard feelings. I'd be happy to talk to you again. We could set up a moderated debate if you want, or we could just have a conversation like this. No problem whatsoever. I wish you well in your endeavors, but I think that you were overly arrogant and very lacking on substance, if I'm being quite honest. And I think that, unfortunately, the immigration debate proves it. And I think that a lot of what's going on is that it's unfortunate to me because a lot of people just won't admit what they really feel. I think it's not too difficult to intuit that what you really think is you were happy with the border. You were. There may be some things that you would say, well, actually, I think we should facilitate these people coming in and being legally allowed here faster. But as far as the amount of people that were coming, you were happy with it, and you wanted them to be left into the country, and you probably even...
Rob, that's a bad faith argument.
Okay,
and
that's what I'm intuiting. That's what I'm intuiting. I'll give you 20 seconds to respond to this. You were upset with the amount of people that were coming at the border then. You thought many of them should have been sent packing, and you were upset with the amount, or you were okay with the amount?
I would neither, I would say. There's a fundamental problem with the asylum. I'm not indifferent either. I'm answering your question. There is a fundamental problem with the system and of the asylum seeking, and it needs to be handled. You can't wave a magic wand to fix it. You can't militarize the U.S. southern border to fix it. That's why I think I was being very good faith with you and your audience that I fundamentally disagree with your position on the border entirely. And I said that multiple times, Rob. And I said that to you multiple times.
I understand you disagree with my position on the border. What I'm saying is we could see the amount of people that were coming. Do you think that was way too many people that were coming? Yes or no will suffice.
I don't. No, I don't.
Okay,
no.
So that's what I said, that you were okay with the amount of people that were coming. And then I'll ask you a follow-up question, which seemed to be the other thing that you objected to. Most of these people, barring like any severe criminality or something, I'll give you the good faith on that you're not saying, oh, this guy was a bin Laden follower, bring him in. But most of those people, barring that sort of stuff, you would have wanted to legally be allowed to remain in the United States?
Wrong.
Okay. What would the process that you would advocate for be?
More money for asylum judges, more security, because that's what that bill would have handled. It would have handled the process in the back.
So you want, but your goal would be to have more judges to send these people packing.
Yes, Rob. Yes.
Okay. That surprises me. I'll take you at your word.
Rob, that's my position. Rob, that has been my position. Like, you didn't even let me explain my full position on it because you were talking over me. Like,
it is.
That's why I said, Rob, I fundamentally disagree with you on the border. And I think I even said it during the debate. I agree there is a problem at the southern border, but I feel that it's in the asylum process and it's so backlogged, which is why I feel it was very important that bill passed so that way we get asylum judges and resources to mitigate those problems, because they're not just going to go away. Those asylum, because they're in the country, Rob, right? Those people that are seeking asylum are in the U.S. right now. I don't disagree with you there. But in order to have them face a judge and be decided if they can continue to stay in the country or go back to wherever they came from, if they're a bad actor or a criminal, they have to face that judge, and we need those resources and money to do so.
What about ones that aren't bad actors and criminals? Should they be left in or not?
So how do you mitigate that? Are you going to have vigilantism?
What I'm asking you is, it seems that there's this huge amount of people that are coming, and we have potentially we have no idea to the tune of like 20 million people. Some people say there's 10 million illegals. Some people say there's 30 million. That's how disparate we are in that number. We have hundreds of thousands that are coming. The number dramatically increasing under Biden. You seem to say, I don't think that number is really a problem. Like, you're sort of indifferent to the amount of people. You're like, I don't think it's really a problem. And so then I'm like, okay, what someone like me is concerned with is, it seems like what the Biden administration is, ultimately they want those people in. And then, as Chuck Schumer said, he wants to give them a path to citizenship. So I already got you to admit, like, I don't really have a problem with that amount of people are coming. I just want them to be processed faster. And so then my follow-up question is...
That's not what I said either, Rob. No. Wrong. That's not what I said either. And
did you say yes or no? Okay, let's break it down. Break it down. Instead of me saying, you said this,
let me do it.
Let's break it down in little parts.
Break it down.
Let me break it down. No. I will break it down in little parts. Did you say that you don't have a problem with the amount of people that we saw coming during the Biden administration? Yes or no?
I don't see it as the same issue as you do, because
that's not the question. That's not the question. Now you're going to say, well, it's not the same as you see it. That implies you know it how I see it, and it leaves room for ambiguity of not answering the question with a yes or a no. I'll ask you again. Did you have a problem with the amount of people that were coming, that we saw?
I have a problem with the backlog. I have a problem with the backlog.
Why can't you answer the question? Why can't you answer the question?
Because I disagree with you fundamentally on the framing of the question.
It has nothing to do. What part of the framing do you disagree with?
The majority of people that are coming into the country and staying here illegally are coming through a visa process and staying.
What does that have anything to do? That has nothing to do. You're intuiting framework that I've never mentioned. Never once did I say anywhere, most of these people are the people that are illegals here.
I know you're not saying it because
you disagree.
I know you're not, Rob. I know you're not.
It has nothing to do with the frame. It has nothing. When you say you disagree, you say that you can't answer the question because you disagree with the framework, you're then implying some sort of framework that I've never said. I'm asking a simple question.
Rob, because
now let me finish. I'm asking a simple question because you keep saying I'm misrepresenting you. So I'm making it as simple as possible. Asking a yes/no question. Did you have a problem with the mass increase in the numbers we saw under the Biden administration? Why can't you just say, no, I don't think that number is a problem. I think the backlog's a problem that they're not being processed. Or yes, I thought that was way too many people coming. Why can't you say either of those?
Because why do you want me to say what you want me to say? Like, why do you want me to have a narrative that you want? Why aren't you just listening to what I'm saying?
I am listening to what you're saying, and what you're saying is nothing. What you're saying is, this is what you're saying. I'll steelman your position. I'm not taking a stance on the amount of people that were coming, that we saw coming, was good or bad. I don't take a stance on that. What I do think is there's a problem with the backlog. That is not answering the question that I'm saying. My fundamental criticism is actually the Biden administration didn't have a problem with the amount of people that were coming in. That's what I'm saying. I suspect that you feel the same way. You say, no, that's a misrepresentation of me. I say, okay, so are you saying that that number was too much, that you had a problem with it or not? And you won't answer. Originally, you said, no, I'm not saying that it was a problem. Now you're saying, well, I don't agree with the framework. How can we have a conversation if I don't know what your beliefs are because you're unwilling to answer simple questions like this? Go ahead, ask me. Rob, did you have a problem with the number of people that were coming through the border on these encounters under Joe Biden? Yes, I absolutely had a problem. I thought it was way too many people. You see? Then it's easy for you to understand what my position is, and you could then talk about that and talk about what I believe.
These issues are not simple yes or no answers and questions, Rob. Like
it is a simple yes or no question. Really for example, let me give you potential answers. No, the number specifically I don't have a problem with. Now, clearly there's a point where it could get to a number that would be overwhelming, but the only problem that number seems bad right now is because of the problem with the backlog. If we had more judges, the fact that this amount of people were coming wouldn't really be a problem because we'd be able to process them and send them back. See how I answered no and then articulated what the framework of that would be? Or yes, even if we had plenty of judges and things like that, this amount of people is not sustainable, and it would be a work overload even if we incredibly increase the funding. It's not sustainable to have this amount of people coming to the border, particularly when many of the people that are coming, as human rights organizations have said, are victims of sexual trafficking, drug mules, and other things like that. So yes, even if we did process these people more, those numbers themselves are problematic on their own. You see how that was another answer? Both of those answers that I gave definitively
highly partisan answers. Those are highly biased, framed answers.
They're not biased. In fact, I suspect that your answer would be the first answer. That's what I would suspect your answer would be. But you can't answer. So I just, real quick before I leave you go, your stance is you refuse to give an answer as to whether or not you thought that the number of people that were coming across the southern border under Joe Biden was bad. You refuse to give an answer to that because there's more framing to it. That's your answer?
There's more context to it. There's more things that need to be done. It's not a one issue.
Right.
I know you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I know. You just want to line everyone up and just execute everybody at the border, but it's not going to happen.
Again, you go back to this sort of straw man. I never said line people up at the border and execute.
I know.
You're unwilling to answer the most basic positions, and you've waffled on. You did not answer. You did not. You said your answer was I refuse to answer.
Wrong. I said that I also see that there's a problem at the U.S. southern border, and I think I've said that multiple times. There
is a problem at the border, right? That's absolutely. You did say there's a problem at the border. I asked if one of the things you have a problem with was the amount of people that were coming under Joe Biden. Now you're saying no. You're saying that's not a problem.
The people that are crossing the U.S. southern border, it's an asylum problem. The people that are seeking asylum in the United States.
Is the amount of people a problem? Is the amount of people that came under the Biden administration?
On the asylum, yes.
So far you've said no.
The asylum list that are seeking
so far you've said no. Then you said no. Then you said I'm not going to answer its framework. Now you're saying yes.
Are you going to listen to what I argument?
Yeah, I'll listen to you change your argument again, as you've done repeatedly. Go ahead. You can change your argument again. Now it is a problem. The amount of people that came is a problem. Go ahead.
The amount of people has been a problem that are coming across, and it's in the asylum. That's why it's been trying to be tackled by the Biden administration, but they keep fighting against MAGA Republicans in the House and Donald Trump on the back end to make sure that this stays a continuous problem because they don't want actually any solutions or legislation at the border. They don't want any policies to actually solve the U.S. southern border problem, and that's why this specific talking point has gone on for like 2 hours, and we haven't been able to talk about anything else.
Cool. If it was a problem, why didn't Biden speak of this? Why was he repeatedly signaling to the American people that there wasn't a problem at the southern border, that it was secure in 2021, 2022?
Because he was legislating for the American people, getting bills passed and getting.
What does that have to do with his statements and Mayorkas' statements that the border was secure? You have to lie and say the border is secure because you're passing the Inflation Reduction Act?
Sure. Okay. My argument on the U.S. southern border.
Come on, that's laughable. You admit that that's a laughable argument.
I don't even know if that's a valid argument to make. Like you're being bad faith with even my own arguments.
What are you talking about? You just said that the reason I said we saw the Biden administration and people like Mayorkas saying in 2021 and 2022 the border is secure. You're admitting actually no, there were way too many people coming. That's what you're admitting. That's not what they were saying in 21 and 22. So I ask you, why weren't they saying that? And you say because they were working on other legislation. And I say, but that's ridiculous. The fact that you have to say the border is secure and you had to lie or be wrong about that because you're working on other legislation, that's an absurd argument. And I'll allow you to respond, I guess.
Like the U.S. southern border and what we are trying to pass there and what the Democrats had, the Republicans could have led that, and they could have taken that position with the bill that was going to be passed and claimed a W on that, but they didn't want to. Yes,
2024.
During
I'm
the
talking
Biden
specifically
administration.
about 2021, 2022.
Why?
Because that was when the crisis began.
Is the crisis not ongoing right now?
Yes.
Okay, so then when we're trying to fix the crisis right now, why is that? Why
That's
can't
an
we get
interesting
legislation to get
deflection.
through?
My argument is
It's not a deflection.
My argument is,
it's
and I've been the
substance
one.
of it.
I've been the one that's been arguing substance on this. What I've argued is that this bill was bad. I outlined things that I thought specifically was bad in the bill. Not everything, but I did outline 4 main points that I was making why I thought it was bad. And I said that at least we could see that the Republicans tried to do stuff and Trump tried to do stuff. He was stymied in 2019 through shutdowns from Democrats that wanted this sort of border crisis to occur. Now, my question became, if the numbers, if you think they were a crisis, why did Biden not say they were a crisis until an election year? Why didn't he say it was too much in 2021, 2022, and 2023?
So the lack of comments is what you're going with, because
just
right-wing media were focused on it, and right-wing podcasters are focused on it.
And not just the lack of comments, though your answer there is very telling. So the reason that Biden didn't say anything is because he was afraid Joe Rogan talked about it, or Tucker Carlson?
Yeah, I would have to look into the first couple of years, and I will give you this, like the first couple of years of Biden's administration, whether he made comments or not. I will happily do that research for you and get back to you on that.
Okay.
I actually will. And but when it comes to the full administration and the full 4 years of the presidency, and at the very end, he was willing to work with Republicans and the Senate-led Republican with James Langford to get a serious border aid done. And you want to cope and say that it wasn't a good bill, and I just fundamentally disagree. And I think it was a very good bill that was going to at least step in the right direction to address the concerns at the southern border, which are overwhelmingly the asylum seekers and the backlog systems that are keeping people on that list and not actually deciding whether they can stay in the country or whether they can leave.
All right.
Or
man. Like again, you're just back to the same talking point. You don't have an answer as to why
that is. I mean, I just gave you an answer.
You've literally said
how is what I'm saying?
If you let me finish, you don't have an answer as to why Biden was out to lunch on this in 2021, 2022, 23. You just are like, well, he tried in 2024. My entire criticism is that he didn't really care about this. He rescinded the issues. He didn't have a problem with the amount of people who was coming. He continued to, in his administration, continued to say the border was secure, that it was a problem being blown out of proportion. They didn't do anything until it was an election year, and then they pushed for this bill, a bill that I'm arguing on substance. I'm the only one talking about the actual things on the bill. Why I think it was bad, and it would have been enshrined in law for years, which meant that if Republicans would win or Trump would win, that they would have difficulty rescinding that. And the same people that are saying, actually, the Haitian immigrants are legal because of the policies that Joe Biden would be making that argument with saying that we have to allow 5,000 or something in a day because they'd say Republicans signed for this. Now they're legal. You have to let them in. It enshrined that into law. Those are reasons that this would be bad. And you just keep going back to the exact same talking point. You just ignore 2021, 2022, 2023, and you're like, yeah, but in 2024, bipartisan bill, Langford would have did good. I disagree with you. That's it. And you're not talking substantively addressing the things I'm saying. It
sounds like projection. It sounds like projection because I am addressing. It's all projection because I'm directly addressing everything.
You are not addressing. You're just saying, I disagree. I think the bill was good. That's your addressing. So, for example,
I've given specific examples of how the bill
when I say, for example, that it allows some 5,000 something a day in, your specific answer was?
My specific answer to allowing 5 good, then the Biden can shut the border down with executive action.
So now your argument is, first off, that's the first time that you've ever addressed that whatsoever. And your answer is laughable. So now your answer is, okay, this bill allows 5,000 a day in, but Biden could then take the executive step of having an executive order on top of the bill that he's pushing for that actually would shut down the Biden.
No, that's what the bill said that he would be able to do. Like that's what's in the bill. That would give him the power to do it. That was one of the talking points.
But it wasn't until the bill wasn't enforceable until a certain number of people were met a day. So it had to be over a certain period of time. So many people had to enter until
Well, no
they can
kidding.
enforce the
So like,
provisions
so
of the
you
bill.
want the border just completely stone cold shut down. Nobody crosses.
That's what
you
I
want.
prefer, but there could have been
Okay,
a bill that wasn't that strong.
so that's your argument.
Well,
So
let
I'm
me be
working
clear.
with
Let me be
somebody-
clear. Let me
so-
be clear.
so-
Let me
so-
be
so-
clear. Let me be clear. I don't think that means
Okay.
that someone who's traveling with a visa from Mexico to visit in the United States shouldn't be allowed to get in. But I do think that the problems we're having right now with immigration are so significant that there needs to be a temporary halt, particularly to the asylum procedures, and so that we shouldn't allow any of these people in because of the advantage that's been taken of it, particularly by Democrats that have been pushing this because they're trying to import these people.
Okay,
However, there
so-
could have been a bill. There could have been a bill that didn't go as far as
wasn't.
I want, but that it certainly would have been far more secure than leaving thousands of people a day in. And
Okay,
when
so
I
just
say,
like
when
you-
I bring that up and you're like, well, if those people decided to come in, then Biden could just through executive fiat say, no, never mind, I'm shutting down the border.
Isn't that what you want?
Is, no, what I want is a bill that
You
doesn't.
don't want Biden to shut the border now?
I
You
don't
him
want
to
a
shut the
bill
border?
that hamstrings our administration's ability to secure the border until 5,000 or something a day come.
So
No, I don't want
You want
that.
dictatorship then? You want
No,
executive
that is not a
action. You want-
dictatorship. Let me
That is a
repeat my-
dictatorship.
So your argument is because I'm opposed to a bill that allows 5,000 illegals a day to cross our border before enforcement action could be taken, that I want a dictatorship. How about I want a bill that only allows 20? That's the bill I want. That's not a
Are you going to
dictatorship.
go? Are you going to go down
That's
there,
what I
Rob,
want.
and stand there
What
and
does
make
this
sure only
have to
20
do?
cross?
You're completely.
What happens
Again,
if
this
21
is empty
cross?
platitude.
What happens if 21
Then
cross?
we enforce the border. Wait, what happens if
What does that
5,000?
mean? What does enforce the border mean? What does
Okay,
enforce
you
the
tell
border
me.
mean?
The same
No,
provisions.
you tell me. No.
Okay,
You
I'll tell you.
me
You
because
ready?
I support the bill. I supported that bill. You didn't.
Okay.
What
The
does
same
securing
thing
the border
happens.
look like to you?
Sure. The same thing happens once 21 reach is the same thing that happens after 5,001 reach in the bill that you want.
The border shuts down.
Okay,
Biden has the
cool.
authority to shut the border down.
Cool.
What do you
That's
mean?
what I want the bill. 20 come in, then we have the authority to shut the border down. Cool. Same thing.
Only 20. That is
Yep.
such an unrealistic. You know, like how you know how.
What's-
So you've
what's
never
the
been to the
difference?
U.S. southern border. You have no idea how long it is.
So now when you made this big, but how would you enforce it? What would you do? Literally, it's the same mechanisms that you want to enforce through. I'm just saying the number of people that we should allow in should be grossly.
It's not a reasonable number. It's not even a reasonable number. But
Now you
which
make
is
a different
why
argument. 5,000 is not a reasonable
it's the
argument.
same argument. No, fuck
I want
that. It's
zero.
the same
I want
argument
zero
I've made
for
since
asylum.
the beginning, and where I say we
All right,
fundamentally
I can't stay here
disagree
all
on
night.
this issue.
We're going in loops. I can't stay all night. Thanks so
We're
much
not-
for calling in. We'll talk some other time.
Right.
See ya.
All right. Sounds good, buddy.
What a joke. First off, thanks to all of his fans that are here spamming things like Rob's crashing out and just repeating the same spam. Thank you so much. Believe it or not, you help me in the algorithm even when you're chatting and you're just repeating spam and you're saying I'm a MAGA trader and this and that. So I get it, much like, what was his name? Alex that called in there. You have nothing of substance. Hold this L. It wasn't even close, much like the Vance Walz debate. He literally, I mean, it just nothing of substance, nothing whatsoever, and an undue sense of arrogance that is very funny. But hey, he's welcome to call back in. I wish the show well. Thanks for his supporters coming in. No, I don't think it should be more than 20. I think it should be 0. I think we need, because it's the same principle as you try to be nice and you set candy out for Halloween because you're not going to be home. And you set candy out for the kids. And then every year you see in your Ring camera that your neighbor who's 40 years old comes over immediately and takes all the candy. At some point you say, you know what? No more candy. You ruined it for everyone. The problem is the asylum procedure has been exploited so bad that we no longer could allow it to occur until there's significant changes. So there needs to be a temporary halt. And we need to secure the border before we make any decisions. That's the role of our government, to protect the citizens of this country. Not to import people from other countries because we feel that we have to be humanitarian. Oh, but it also just happens to coincide with the agendas politically that these people want. It's garbage. So I appreciate the people spamming. Thank you so much. Hope it was enjoyable for people. Now, the rest of you in the chat, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get to you, Emmett Scratch and Amigo. I got to get out of here tonight. Tomorrow's stream, I don't know. Maybe I'll take other calls. I don't know. But this is fun. I enjoy sparring with someone like that disagrees with me, even if it's not the best effort put forth. The only thing I'll say that is frustrating, I'll admit, I was a little contentious at first, maybe more than I should have been. I tried to rein myself back in, give him a chance to speak, even though I felt he was interrupting me at times. But I tried to, after the first interaction, to give that sort of courtesy. So I hope that came through. The other thing, the only thing, though, is, like, I can't stand people that just can't give a specific answer to things. It's so frustrating. I'm going to cry in the car. I'm going to go to bed. I'm not heading to a car. Like, I don't even... I don't even know what someone is like, take the L. You going to cry in the car? You talked over him. Yeah, he talked over me as well. I think after the first part of the exchange, I let him go almost the entire time and didn't talk over him. But the fact that he's just like simple refusal to answer the question, or even worse, when he constantly changes his answer. Like, you're a liar. You're a liar. Okay, what part am I lying about? You're lying. What you're saying about the bill. Okay, let's go step by step through the things I said about it. Does it fund NGOs? No. Yeah, it does. Well, okay, it does. All right, so you admitted it funds NGOs. I didn't admit that. Yes, you just did. Okay, I guess I'll ask you again. Does it fund NGOs? Yeah. So you said, yes, it does fund. Then no, you didn't say that. And then you said, yes, it does fund. Okay, let's go to part 2. And then once we go through these things one by one, which he doesn't address the whole time, he then just defaults to, well, you're framing. You're framing of it. Okay, what part of the framing is a lie? Well, actually, more people overstay their visas. What's that have to do with anything that I just talked about? Are they chat spam bots or just friends of his? I don't know. It doesn't bother me. They're not very... It helps the algorithm, and I don't care. Yeah, and that's one of the frustrating things. Like, listen, you could agree or disagree with me. I said I thought Trump lost the debate to Kamala Harris. Said so definitively. Many people that are Trump supporters didn't like the fact that I said that. If you can't admit that Walz lost this debate, that's a really bad look. And particularly when I'm like, he asked me specifically why I think that Vance won, and I outlined 3 reasons that I think he won. And right out of the gate, he's like, well, I concede with you in optics. Okay. The substance he doesn't really get to. And then when I talk about the framing that he labeled Harris as connected to the Biden administration, he's just like, no. And I'm like, but Walz never even pushed back. Well, I just know that's not true. And it's frustrating because it's like, well, you're not identifying the debate then. You're bringing your own bias into it. Yeah, you could, for example, I thought Trump lost the debate to Harris. I was still voting for Trump. But I was able to say the performance that was on stage was Harris, I thought, outperformed Trump. I didn't say, well, actually, I know how shitty Harris is. This is what I know, so this is why Harris lost. That's not how I evaluated the debate. So, Walz won your heart. Good for you, man. But, no, it's fun. It's a MAGA thing to do, talk over people. He talked over me way more. Cool. I guess he's a maggot then. That's cool. But no, I don't mind it. Anyways, thanks so much. All of your financial donations. Oh, I wanted to read Super Chats. I'm so sorry. Let's get to that. Roar for $5 says, this dude's a clown, soy rage and smug. He thinks he's way smarter than he is and very uninformed. I agree. Supig Daking for $5 says, this guy's dumb. 2021 to 2023, they had the House with the 50-50 Senate with Harris making the tiebreak vote like she did for the Inflation Reduction Act. That's what I thought. And we looked it up and it was true. Bubblegum Gun for $2 says, boy, was cooked and salty. Another Rob W. clip. Thank you. Appreciate it. Another $2 for Bubblegum Gun says, Republicans need to disavow the traitor Abe Lincoln. Bubblegum Gun again. Third in a row for $2 says, his argument, you're an authoritarian fascist. What a joke. Yeah, not sending their best. MT Wick, $9.99 says, he was an NPC just spewing the typical lines that real and non-informed voters. I agree. It was a lot. There wasn't a lot of substance there. But I don't wish him ill. Really. Someone who's getting into the space, I wish him well. And maybe he'll advance as a debater and start to get better. But, you know, my only advice would be, I don't mind people that would, you know, disagree with me. Merc chat cooking meat. Cool. Okay, good deal. Getting cooked. I don't mind people that maybe disagree or I think aren't performing the best, but the duplicitous stuff, it's like, come on, just give an answer. And it becomes frustrating, changing your answers constantly. Yeah, Alex Mercado, I think's his name. So, I mean, I don't know. It becomes frustrating. I think that it is, particularly when he's saying that I'm bad faith. It's like, come on. I'll at least answer questions straight up. Anyways, let's raid someone on Twitch. I'm out of here for the night. Resources. I don't know what tomorrow night's show will be, but let's... Now, I know my boy Aircraft Sparky's streaming, but Ranger Rogue's been raiding me a lot, so I'm going to raid him right now. Great dude. So let's rate him. Thanks so much, everyone that supported, even the spam bots. Thank you so much for helping me out. Really appreciate it. It really helps me. Rob's chat is fat and stinky. Finally, someone tells the truth. I didn't want to say it. Sammy. You nailed it, though. Have a bath, you pig. Me too. I do. I'm going to get a shower, not a bath. But thank you. Appreciate it. So thanks so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. Enjoy the raid if you're on Twitch of Ranger and Rogue. The rest of you, thanks so much. Particularly thanks to everyone that donated. All the callers, thanks so much. You helped make the show. Everyone in the audience, really appreciate it. You guys are the best. I had almost 300 people watching tonight. It's pretty damn cool. So thanks so much. Really appreciate you all. So hopefully I'll see you all tomorrow evening. As always, have a good one.